Did anyone who listened to the last episode ask you about any like audio issues at all?
Haven't heard anything.
No? Okay. Because I asked a few people that I know, and they said, oh, it seems fine. But when I was listening back to it, editing it, I was like, why does it sound weird? I think what happened was I just because I add a denoiser to the audio itself, and I think I just cranked it up a little too high, because when Sam sends in his night call videos that he sends in, I have to go through and I have to denoise the fuck out of it, because he's like walking his dog and his kid in the stroller. I don't know if I've shown you like those videos that he sends in.
No.
But it's funny because when I had the idea for the night call with Sam Parker, I was thinking like, okay, he's going to do it like how he does Block Party Academy, where he sits in front of a camera and he talks. Yeah. He talks and he gives, clear audio. No, he just decides to bang it out while he's on his morning run. Yep. Like he's very multitasking.
He's got to get his thoughts out.
He does. And, he sent in the last few, and it was fun to hear his ever-changing thoughts on Twisters, because it just seems like how the production of Megalopolis was, just this ever-evolving thing that just ebbs and flows.
Yes.
So that's interesting. But when he sends it in, I have to clean the hell out of the audio because there's like wind going on. There's like
I can
the dog walking. I can hear like the chain rattling back and forth.
Yeah.
Sometimes the baby coos in and out. And I'm like, okay, I got to do something about this. So it's just like a big old mess I have to clean up, which is not really Sam's fault. It's just the way it is. But then...
it's totally his fault. He's recording it while he's running, but he is doing us a service by throwing his thoughts, but he could still...
I'll let you say that because you're his brother, and you can get away with it. But I think I just applied that same filter to our actual episode. So the audio sounded like a little weird, but... I think right now it sounds okay. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the Neon Crew podcast? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Job 38, chapter 4, verse 7.
I'm going to guess that's Megalopolis.
I mean, you would be right to guess that, but it is not.
Well, I knew that there was a... They had a quote. That quote was in Tree of Life. Because I remember reading like the proverb thing, and I was like, "Oh, interesting."
Yeah, it's a proverb from the book of Job that pops up as a title card in Tree of Life in the opening, and we'll get into Tree of Life. But welcome everybody to episode 81 of the Neon Crew podcast. My name is Kyle,
and I'm McLean.
And not much in the way of news for movies. I don't know if you have anything on the table. But
busy boy.
We've both been busy boys.
Yeah.
Apparently we're just getting like the worst movies ever, like the past month or so, between, fucking The Crow and Megalopolis. And I hear that the new Joker's not doing so great.
I'm having a hard time because I love the trailer so much.
The trailer's really good.
Like I just keep thinking that people were expecting one thing and Todd Phillips went a different way with it.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, so like
we should say neither of us have seen the new Joker yet.
No, I haven't, and I'm excited to see it. I'm very curious because there was a couple reviews that came out immediately, and it was like, this ain't your grandma's Joker, like, and it was going into how Todd Phillips mastered it, and then it was 50 reviews after that saying Falladoo falls on its face or whatever, and
more like Falia doo-doo, am I right?
Yeah. Oh, I hope not. I don't know. So I haven't read anything. I'm just going, all right, these people were expecting one thing, let down, and they just have to vent.
I know. I've managed to avoid specifics of what people have gripes against that movie for.
Yeah.
So I'm going in with, maybe not as high of expectations as with any case with a big sequel coming out, especially 5 years after a hit movie. But I still don't know entirely what to expect in terms of like the specifics of like the story or like, how it all plays out, if it's coherent.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking a lot about coherence in this episode with, I think, both movies.
Yeah,
it's fair to say.
Though there's a movie named Coherence. I don't know if we've. So you said that, I was like, is that?
I didn't even know that was a movie that existed.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we can just kind of get into it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna discuss Megalopolis.
Yes.
We both decided that we're gonna watch this and talk about this because we felt Francis Ford Coppola, kind of a big deal. If you know anything about movies, you know that he's a very prolific director. This is his first movie that he's made in a while that feels like it has any level of gravitas behind it. Because he's had other features that he's put out within the past like 10, 15 years. It's just they've all been like really small budget and they don't normally stick the landing, or they just go under the radar and people don't really talk about them.
Red flags.
That's exactly what people thought about him in the 80s, and that's exactly what people think about him now. So since I recommended Tree of Life, I will summate that later, and I will give Megalopolis to you. I am so excited to hear you explain this film.
Yeah. We're going to give it a shot. All right. Megalopolis came out this year, 2024. 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is interesting because that's how long the Tree of Life was.
Do you remember the quote in Breaking Bad when, I'm not going to get into specifics, but Jesse confronts Walter about something and he goes, 2 hours and 18 minutes?
2 hours and 18 minutes.
You remember that scene? I don't want to spoil it, but I'll tell you.
What season?
Season 4. It's Walt goes into Jesse's house and he confronts him about something, and then Jesse confronts Walt about something in return. I think you know what scene I'm talking about.
Yeah, that just popped up because it's a very specific time.
How about this? I'll tell you, and then I'll bleep it out.
No, can I guess?
Yeah.
All right, you're gonna edit this out.
I'll just bleep it out. Yeah.
It was the.
No.
Damn it.
Close. It's when Walt and he says you had 2 hours and 18 minutes to do it, and then Jesse pieces it together and realizes that.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and he says, 2 hours and 18 minutes.
2 hours and 18 minutes.
Which is the thought going through my brain when I'm watching this film. But continue.
Clip that and put it at the very beginning of this episode.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. Okay. Yeah, 2 hours, 18 minutes. As we talked about, written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Adam Driver as Caesar Catalina. Speaking of Breaking Bad, Giancarlo Esposito as Mayor Cicero.
Great pronunciation.
Nice. Oh man, and now I got this one. Natalie Emmanuel as Julia Cicero.
Nice.
Aubrey Plaza as Wow. That's her fucking name.
Yeah, wow. Yes, Auntie Wow.
Wow Platinum as Aubrey Plaza. Shia LaBeouf as Claudio Pulcher.
Pulcher for the culture.
And then last one I'll do. Well, two more. John Voight as Hamilton Crassus III. Or Crassus?
I think it's Crassus.
Crassus.
Yeah.
And then Lawrence Fishburne as Fundy Romaine Lettuce.
Who's also the narrator of the film.
Yeah, which, whatever.
If I can add one more, and this is a totally important character played by such a prolific actor that you know that he's going to play a big role in this movie, right?
The
he's
henchman?
going to have such a big impact that his presence is just going to wow you. His importance to this movie is immaculate. I'm of course talking about Dustin Hoffman as Nush Berman.
Oh, man. I know. I felt like Coppola made a couple calls. I was like, hey, you guys be in this thing?
Well, you know who was supposed to play that character originally? James Caan.
Oh, really?
But then he died.
I don't know why I said it like, oh, that would have made it so much better. That guy was left out to hang to dry.
Movie's fixed if we can get a nice thief in here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Plot. Okay. We're going to give it a shot.
That's what he said before he started recording the camera.
Yeah, right. Okay. The city of New Rome hosts the conflict between Caesar and Catalina. So this movie starts out with Adam Driver. Actually, it's got a couple quotes. It's kind of talking about the Roman Empire and the fall of civilization and why that civilization didn't succeed. So we're really getting into some profound stuff right off the gate, which I thought was going to... I mean, it kind of plays out, but... we get into Caesar, and he is doing like, oh, I can stop time with my mind, which never really given clarity onto why or where we're at really in this world. So now we're in New Rome, which is kind of like New York City, except it's just New Rome. They got Madison Square Garden there for some reason. You can't tell if it's in the future or the past.
I feel like that Coppola might say that's a feature, not a bug. I might disagree.
Okay.
But continue.
And Caesar is there to essentially construct a new civilization within the central park of what would be New York City. And he's created this new element in the fucking elemental chart. Megalon that's never described of what it does. It's just there. And there's he's battling the mayor on holding the city and being able to build this utopia, and the mayor hates him because he was a former DA and Adam Driver may or may not have killed his wife, and he didn't get him, and he feels like he's a bad dude. And while all this is going on, you have Crassus III, who is a trillionaire.
I think he's also Caesar's uncle.
Sure.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. He's Caesar's. The fucking names on this thing were just...
Oh, you got tripped up on the names? On all the C names in this movie?
For no... Claudio Pulcher's his grandpa, and he's got a different last name.
Yep. Shia LaBeouf plays Claudio Pulcher.
So his mom was Crassus' daughter, and the dad's nowhere to be found. Yeah, and so Claudio starts kind of coming in, and he's going to take over the angsty civilization of New Rome that I don't know if it's a fucking city or the world. And that's it. We get the battle. We get to go through the Caesar trying to construct a utopian civilization with Megalon and using his time-stopping ability to halt the mayor that's doing nothing and thwart Claudio, who at some point decides he's going to lead a revolt and take over New Rome. And that's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
2 hours and 18 minutes? Mr. White. Yeah, so we were going to see this movie. Even if we didn't do this podcast, I feel like we would have watched this movie regardless because
okay.
Well,
one of us would have.
Hey, I would have saw it and I would have seen it and I would have told you, run, don't walk to your nearest 9:30 p.m. showing of Megalopolis. You would have been
like, dude, we have to talk about this because I think this thing is...
I would have.
It's worth talking about in the sense of watching a car crash and, seeing another bystander on the street. Then it's just like like two of you. And it's like, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. Did you see that? And now you got to go through all the events because it was just like a gnarly fucking car crash.
So to set up a bit of context, after he made Apocalypse Now, or towards the end of making that movie, in itself a tumultuous shooting for Francis Ford Coppola, one of the most well-documented disastrous movie makings of all time.
Arduous. That
somehow managed to create like an all-timer. The movie is great. Like it's
one of the like it's a potluck that just everyone threw in the right ingredients.
Like somehow it all worked out despite all the issues with the production of that film.
Yeah.
So 1977, Coppola has the idea to make Megalopolis. He wants to create a combination of modern New York with these sensibilities of like the Roman Empire and that whole aesthetic, and he wants to take those and merge them and make a story of I think it's called, what is it, the Catalarian Conspiracy, which I guess is I haven't read about that specifically, but it's supposed
Caesar Catalina, so it would have been
the inspiration for this movie's story, because there's the character of Catalina, and then there's also the character of Cicero.
Yes, Cicero's Mayor Cicero.
Yes,
which had a very Shakespearean feel to it.
Yeah, and we'll get into that
okay.
the further we, because like I definitely picked up on those attempts in this movie.
A lot of attempts. This whole thing was an attempt.
This whole thing is an attempt to climb up an escalator, and he just never gets off. So he's trying to make this movie for a long time. He began plotting in 1983, so he took about 7 years, 6 or 7 years after Apocalypse Now, to kind of get the ball
41 years
rolling.
ago.
And he just kept trying, and it was just like an endless tedium amount of work. He tried to get it made in 89, but he had a series of huge flops that studios were not confident in backing him for.
Good call.
And then he tried to make it in 2001, and then, of course, it being set in New York, 9/11 happens. He feels like he can't touch a movie having to do with New York with a 10-foot
I'm sure
pole.
that was the reason.
Well, you'll find that Mr. Coppola is a man of excuses.
This movie's an excuse at his fucking career.
So he decides, I'm done with the studio system. I don't want to go through actual like bigwigs and producers anymore. I want to self-finance this thing. So he makes a winemaking business, which is very profitable. It's more profitable than any movie he had put out at that point. I think even including The Godfather Part 3. And then that gives him the money to self-finance his project, Megalopolis. And this goes through a series of different casting choices, different people that he wanted to include in this movie. It ebbs and flows and it changes to the point where we get, the cast that we have now in this film.
Yeah.
And it was just a development hell for the longest time. Production itself was arduous. A lot of people reported that Francis Ford Coppola would just hide in his trailer and smoke weed the whole time. You have the sexual assault allegations of him going up to extras and like forcing himself on them, like kissing them too much to get them in the mood, air quotes, for certain scenes. Like in club scenes or whatever, where they're supposed to be like dancing and provocative.
I was just about to say like the tripping scene.
I'm trying to find, because there was I found it. There's a list of actors that in the 2001 version were going to be in this movie.
Okay.
And I'm just going to read the list of names, and I just want to get your reaction.
Okay.
So the first one, Nicolas Cage, his nephew, which you're going to find even in this current version of the film, his family's all over this fucking thing.
His the chicks, his sister's in it.
Talia Shire.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe, Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Giancarlo Esposito, who I guess has been attached to this thing for longer than any other castmate in this film.
Yeah.
Edie Falco, James Gandolfini, John Hamm, Paul Newman, Al Pacino, Parker Posey, Kevin Spacey, and Uma Thurman. Matt Dillon wanted to be a part of the movie, but Francis Ford Coppola said at that point you were too old to be in it.
Dude, he could have played Claudio.
He could have played a great Claudio, I think.
At that time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Matt Dillon's, he's got that scumbag energy about him that he can just like conjure up.
Yeah,
and he'd be intimidating too.
I was about to say
an opposing figure.
What Shia LaBeouf lacked.
Well, we'll get into it, but
little what do they call that? Nymph.
Short man complex. Or what is it? Little dog complex?
No, it's a nymph. What? I'm trying to think. It's another Shakespeare thing.
I think you're right. I think nymph, maybe.
It's a nymph. It's a
like water nymph or
no. It's not a nymph. It's I'll look it up.
Okay,
but it's part of Shakespeare. When he wrote the God damn, I can't even think of the play now.
I should know this because I am a literature major.
Yeah,
and,
I'm faulting you.
Yeah, my brain is just collapsing. Well, we're talking about Megalopolis, so that's easy to understand. But either way, this movie goes through a bunch of different versions. The production is just a nightmare. And up until the release of the film, it was mired with all this bad press. Studios did not want to market it, even though he self-financed the entire thing himself. no studio wanted to pick it up and distribute it because they felt it was too polarizing and too impossible to market in any way. So,
which makes sense.
Francis Ford Coppola says, fuck it, I'll put more money into it and I'll market the movie myself. And then you get things like the AI quotes generated trailer that comes out that I've only seen one time in a theater before my showing of The Crow. Lionsgate is distributing the film, but they're doing no effort to market it whatsoever, it seems like. So everything is just leading up to this thing a disaster. Movie comes out, it gets lambasted. I want you to guess how much money it has made so far against a roughly $120 to $136 million budget.
I'm gonna guess $6,050,000.
Close. If you were Price is Right rules, you would be making the Showcase Showdown. $8.7 million.
Oh.
Since its release, September 27th. So it's been a healthy few weeks since this movie's been out officially.
Healthy.
Yeah. Maybe unhealthy for this film. But when you watch this movie, it is very clear that there is a troubled production behind this film. It feels like a mixture of tones and aesthetic and visual style that just doesn't mesh at all. I couldn't help but laugh at many of the moments throughout this movie, almost in a way that I would laugh at a Neil Breen film.
Yeah.
Where it just feels like Coppola is trying to incorporate so many different themes and so many different ideas in a way where it feels like it hits you over the head and it's not subtle whatsoever, but because he's throwing so much at you, you can't help but feel like, okay, he clearly wants this movie to be deep, and there's just too much to wade through. And so what you get is just an over-bloated mess.
1,000%.
Are you still looking for that Shakespeare thing?
Yeah. It's Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream. He's a nymph or a nip, something like that. Anyways,
my overall thoughts on this movie is that it is fascinating to look at as a case study. I would never really want to watch this movie ever again for entertainment's sake. It would be under the eye of an analytical viewing where I would want to pinpoint almost everything that went wrong with this thing.
No, you couldn't.
It's a task,
Yeah,
right?
I don't think
there's so much going on in this film, but at the same time, it feels lazy, right?
I don't know about lazy. I think I think what happens is when you have 45 years of constantly evolving a story to get it down into a condensed version, you got what we got.
You get lost in the fog.
I
you lose sight of what it is you want to accomplish.
I think from what I took away from it is he had a lot of things to say about our society, and he wanted to get out. It was almost like someone who had been journaling for 45 years, and like you see something new and you write it in your journal and it's a new profound thought that you have, and it's like, well, we could get that on the camera too. So he took a lot of big concepts and threw them all on the screen. So I don't want to say lazy. I think he was overwhelmed, and this just felt like someone who's trying to be so grandiose in what they're trying to accomplish and feel like they have such a profound statement to make that you get this congealed pile of shit. Mm-hmm. It is, I
like your eyes are too bigger than your stomach.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom it, but I mean, like, start writing something now, and then when you're 60, we'll work on getting it directed. Mm. And same story, but just everything that you see new that happens with the world, we're going to add into there. So you got to take away something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like he wrote this 45 years ago, set it down, and just waited. Like, he's been adding to it. Right. So he's gone through 4 decades worth of changes in technology alone.
He was shooting previs in New York while 9/11 was... Not while it was taking place, but leading up to that day.
Yeah.
So he was just chipping away at this thing with different ideas and different filmmaking and revisiting it, constantly like going through, like adding different things.
Dude, like
It feels like the equivalent of those potato chips where it's like, oh, it's an everything flavor.
Yeah.
And then you take a bite, it's like, holy shit, like this tastes awful. Like there's too much going on.
yeah, there's always the chance that it might taste exceptionally well, and then there's the other chance that you're just gonna have the boy, I tasted everything at once and that did not mesh.
Do you think, and you know, we'll get into the specifics of the film here soon.
We'll try.
Do you think if this movie was made, let's say in the 90s, like mid 90s, right around when he was like developing it, kind of like the first go around of him creating this idea, do you think there could have been a more coherent film if it were like a 1990s version?
It's funny that you say that, because I think the problem that he had was it wouldn't have looked as good. It would have done. This thing felt more of a play than it does anything else. This thing probably
Yes.
could be a play on Broadway and be all right. Like they could take some really schlocky set designs, but the way that everyone's speaking in this,
Yeah, the
and
dialogue especially.
yes, is so like written for theater than it is for being on a screen. So I definitely think that it would have looked a lot more schlocky doing it, but this thing would have been a lot more relevant, simply because there are things that happen. Like one of the things that's going on is our election stuff going on, and all the things that are going on with politics now that we didn't really see 20 years ago. You know, the style.
Yeah.
And he threw that in there. Like that felt like, hey, let's get this in here too, because this is going to be important to say. So like you probably could take out 20 different ideas that he had, and this thing would have been a lot more refined. So yeah, I think it would have been not great, but it would have made a lot more sense 30 years ago than it does now.
To me, the most consistent thing about this movie, and you know, we touched on it, is the idea that Coppola really wanted this to feel Shakespearean. He wanted this to feel like you're watching a play where the characters have dialogue like they're in a play, this back and forth. And I don't think any other scene in this movie that exemplifies that more than the first, 10 minutes where they're in the rafters. Every single major character is present for this presentation that Caesar Catalina is putting on. And it all serves to undercut Giancarlo Esposito's character, Mayor Cicero, because Cicero has been mayor, and whenever he comes in, which is kind of a funny through line, is people just boo him whenever he shows up. And Caesar comes in and he undermines him, and he presents this grand idea that people will like either laud him for, or they'll like be like, no, you can't do this, like we like how things are, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And the way that scene is set up with like them in the rafters, it feels like they're behind the curtains and behind the scenes of an actual stage play.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt in my mind that it was very purposefully constructed that way, because you've got every single major player there all at once. A typical movie, you know, you'll open with the main character and you'll slowly introduce others along the way.
Yeah.
Whereas this one throws every single one at you. They're all on stage at the same time.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, this is the audience's view of like who these people are, who they are related to each other.
Yes.
And like how it's supposed to play out throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah.
The problem is, does not mesh well with what he wanted to do visually. It doesn't mesh well with the pacing of the film, how he wanted to inject this experimental psychedelic layer over it in a way that really feels, and that's kind of why I used the term lazy earlier, because it almost just feels like he put shit in to put shit in. And, you know, there's obviously some clear ideas going on, but they're ideas that are just that. They don't feel expanded upon. They just feel introduced and left there, sat at the table, and then we're just supposed to kind of take away from it what we take away from it.
You got to remember, he wrote it. So he's getting...
I remember.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it's lazy. I think, like, this was his biggest film he's ever going to make, because he's like, I finally get my journal.
I got to put it all on the line.
Yeah.
This is going to be my swan song, my magnum opus. I'm 85 years old. I don't think I have one more left in me.
Everything that comes... that every idea that comes out is... Like, 30 minutes into this thing, when I started, I was like, all right, he's got a couple things that he's saying. It turned into, oh, he's just spewing what he wants to get off his brain about what he thinks is wrong with society. Mm-hmm. Like that was his, and that's why I don't know. Like I don't want to say lazy. I just think that he just went. I have the mic. I have the mic. You will listen.
Yes.
And Breaking Bad. I've got the talking pillow. You know, and this was his chance to get it all out there, and that's why it's. Like I don't want to say lazy. I just think that he's like, all right, I gotta weave this into all this other shit I got going on, and it's just. Yeah, it doesn't work.
And it's I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me it's very clear that he views himself as the Adam Driver character.
Yeah.
He
of course.
is Caesar Catalina, the misunderstood genius that is doing his best to usher in a new era of art and filmmaking and whatever else fucking Cicero wants to accomplish. At least, with him it's constructing Megalopolis. But he feels misunderstood. Everybody's like, no, what are you doing? This sucks or whatever. Like he feels like he has things to say with this movie in the same way that Adam Driver feels like he's compelled to help society.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I also feel like I'm only assuming that he's seeing the decay of civilization. And he's looking at the government now, and he's saying that people need to rise up, and let the artists take over, and let those with genuine, true thoughts and ideas start pushing through and get away from the systematic corruption that's going on.
Yeah, push the politicians out. Let people of humanity step in and creativity, and we're gonna usher in like this new phase.
Yeah, it felt like a very that's why I was laughing when he said he was smoking weed, and it's because all I can imagine is him just sitting there and going into like a Karl Marx, utopian and getting all the community members on board. But you need to have like the pure genius of it all, and who would that be? Francis Ford Coppola, of course.
So let's get into the nitty gritty of this movie.
Okay.
There's so much going on.
Nitty gritty.
So the first thing I kind of want to touch on, is the clashing visual aesthetic of New Rome with New York City.
Yeah, dumb as shit.
Obviously, this is an element that Francis wanted to include from the very beginning. This is like the thing that he's stuck with the most. I want to merge this Roman Empire concept and artistic style with modern day New York.
Yes.
And I feel like in some scenes, the production value is pretty impressive. I think that the sets are something to behold in a lot of different moments. I think for the most part, it is such a jarring juxtaposition that I don't think he merged that well at all. Like, I think that when you are in the midst of, we're in this Coliseum and everybody is in like black and gold and we've got this like grandiose feeling to it, I think that works. And then all of a sudden you cut to a scene where Adam Driver goes out into the street in his joggers and everything's gray and it just looks like plain ass New York.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the guy that's like, what would it be like if we, crossbred a Chihuahua with a Great Dane? Like, I got to imagine there'd be some qualities in there that look great. It's like, no, just looks like a fucked up mutant dog.
Like, it's so weird how he manages to, like, pick and choose what is influenced by, like Roman culture and what is just, like, plain Jane New York City that you would just see on any typical day.
I think that's because he's like, man, like, they're half-baked ideas, like that would look really cool, like the Madison Square Garden with like, we're going to make it like the Coliseum and we're going to have these chariots going and fucking battles and wrestling, and all of a sudden you're going to really feel like you're in, like Rome and seeing all, and then he's like, well, what about Central Park when he's going for a jog? Yeah, I don't know, it probably just it looks like it would now, right? Like,
yeah, Francis Ford Coppola was like, he gets cold. He's got to wear a coat.
Yeah.
He's got to put on a stocking cap.
Like he just had like some spots he picked out. He's like, this will look great. And it's like, well, what about the other half of this mixture? And it's like, Yeah, I don't know. Make it futuristic. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been pulled out of a film's immersion more than when we go from like these really stylistic scenes
Yes.
that are like, you know, lit pretty impressively and like dressed
I
pretty
like
nicely.
the rafter. Like, I was kind of like, all right, I'm kind of, besides the shitty acting going on, like I like the rafters.
Jesus
and
Christ, yes. But yeah, I agree with you. The setup of all those different things
Yes.
with like this hubbub and like these people dressed in like this Roman garb and everyone's
Yeah.
done up and it's beautiful. And then it's like, okay, well now I'm seeing people in like ball caps and denim jackets. Like what is this aesthetic that he's trying? He doesn't merge it well at all. It's way too clashing. I feel like there's a way he could have done it that sort of conveyed that invasion of Roman ideas with like modern sensibilities, and this just wasn't it.
No, he didn't have a clear depiction of where we were at. He doesn't have a great establishment of hey, I mean, maybe he did. Did it say 2,500 or something like that? Like
I think it's just supposed to be like
present day
New York, except there's like Roman shit in it.
Yeah. So like, I don't know if we're in a different universe. I don't know if this is like, it's a fable. He labels that right off the get. So it's kind of like, all right, so we're kind of going through his own, and like maybe not interpretation, but his own story and this little bit of a make-believe world. But I don't think it was really set up that well.
It doesn't feel as fable-y as it could have been.
Right. Like, have a little bit more going on, you know? And that's where I think it's like half-baked ideas with, I think this would look really cool, but I don't know what I want to do with that.
Yeah, it's like either go full tilt into it or don't do it at all.
Yes.
It kind of feels like he's pussyfooting around the production value of it all.
Yeah, pussy. That's where I would say it was lazy, is him being like, yeah, what we're just gonna kind of mix both in together. And it makes it confusing.
Mm-hmm. Like, we're gonna have this Coliseum scene where it's the wedding of Hamilton Crassus III and Wow Platinum.
Yep.
And it's gonna be like this big production thing. Shia LaBeouf is doing business with his sisters. Adam Driver's getting fucking plastered. Like, all this shit's going on. And then it's like, oh yeah, Claudio's just holding a rally in Central Park, and he looks like a fucking dork, and everybody's wearing jeans and T-shirts around him. Like,
that was bizarre.
It's like, okay,
yeah, really weird.
Feels very chopped up. And you mentioned the acting.
Oh god, dude, this thing is fucking lacking everywhere.
Embarrassing.
Like, I don't even know, like...
Embarrassing is the word I would use.
I would say everyone...
For a lot of these performances.
No one gave a shit, and then you have Shia LaBeouf, who is overacting or doing whatever he can to interpret what the character is.
Shia LaBeouf, to me, is the most interesting character in this movie, because it actually feels like he knows kind of what the deal of the movie is.
Well, you know...
It feels like he's aware of how ridiculous everything is, so to me, he's just saying, like, fuck it. I'm just going to go all in on this.
Dude, so the only reason why I hold it against him is because when he was on the set of Fury, right? Fury's it's World War II.
Yeah.
We've talked about it.
I've seen Fury. Okay. I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, him and trying to get into his character and how insane he went. Like...
Him pulling his tooth out and going like, see, this is what you need to do to be an actor, kid. Going up to Logan Lerman and trying to like cut his face up.
Yeah, like kind of... lost his mind. That's why, like, with him, I'm never like, oh, I feel like he knows what's going on. Like, just watching him, I was like, oh, he's just doing what he knows. So like, he could have been he would have played the same way if he was Caesar, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that he leaned into anything. It's just probably the best acting choice they had to play that guy, and he still made it weird as shit.
I think it does weirdly fit with the type of character they wanted him to play, though. It's just that the type of character they wanted him to play is also just like, what? He's trying to get power so that he can... He's not going to become mayor, because Giancarlo Esposito's mayor, and it's very clear that, like, okay, he's staying mayor.
That's the other thing I didn't get.
But he wants to be like interim CEO, and he wants to undermine John Voight. And
to get the money
so he can fuck over Caesar, because he controls Caesar's accounts, and he's hated Caesar ever since he was 6 years old. But then he also is like this wacky party dude who likes to fuck his sisters. That's another thing in this film too, by the way. They love to bring up the fact that Claudio Pulcher and his sisters all sleep with each other.
Yeah.
They bring it up like 4 times in the film.
Incest is run rampant in this thing.
It seems to be a common theme for Mr. Coppola.
Yes.
Between this and Godfather Part 3.
Bizarre.
But his character is, I think, being portrayed in an interesting way. It's just that it also happens to be in this film where it's like everything is just being a fucking mess.
What I'm saying is, give me someone that isn't Shia LaBeouf in that role so I can feel like I'm not watching Shia LaBeouf. He's Shia LaBeouf.
Sure.
Like he's on screen and I never go, that's Claudio. I'm just saying like,
if you're
if he is, or what's Shia doing? It's not like, oh, that's Claudio being Claudio. I'm just like, is it? I mean, I'm sure this is the intent, but is this like over the top?
Yeah, if you're not on board for Shia LaBeouf, then you won't be in a movie like this.
Yeah, like I need give me someone that feels more grounded or go against type, so that it's more harrowing watching it than. And that's why I don't want to say miscast, but like everywhere it just, and I don't know if it's just bad acting or no one. And I also feel like it probably lacks direction because none of the characters really know like what the motivation is for anyone in this thing. Like we're talking about it, right? Shia LaBeouf wants to become. He can't become mayor, but he's going to lead a revolution and take over New Rome.
But he just keeps saying "Pulcher for the culture." I'm gonna help you. Fuck Caesar Catalina. And his user base is just like, yeah, fuck Caesar, Caesar. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do to stop him? And he's like,
well, why does it...
I don't know. I guess I'll freeze his bank accounts.
Yeah, like then he's like, Caesar's... I don't know. That's what I didn't get. I'm like, is there an election coming up? Like, what's going on? Why is the mayor still mayor? Like, everyone doesn't like him. Is he just now the emperor, or is he the Caesar? And then if he is, because that's what Caesar was of Rome, he was the guardian of civilization, right? I mean, and he didn't let go of power. So why is Adam Driver named Caesar if we're trying to promote a good civilization? Like, that feels ironic.
Let's talk about... That's a good segue to talk about Adam Driver. I like Adam Driver a lot.
Okay.
I think he's a great actor just in general.
Yes. Agreed.
This movie's kind of embarrassing for him, right? Like, this is sort of a type of movie role that you watch clips of on YouTube and you go like, ooh, like I think he's being how do I put this? I think that he is giving the performance that Coppola wants him to give. It's just that that performance is like a mess. It is wacky.
We've kind of talked about this a lot with misunderstood genius, and that it's very hard to fucking nail. Why? Because the misunderstood genius is a misunderstood genius. Now, to go out there and portray a misunderstood, you're not going to know what that's like.
Right.
You're not in that headspace. So what do you tell the guy to do?
Well, here's the thing, too. I think it could be an interesting portrayal of a misunderstood genius who is portrayed as just nothing but an asshole. It works for a movie like The Social Network because you're just interested in seeing where the story goes, and it helps that the performance from Jesse Eisenberg is really good.
Well, and he knows
and grounded.
He's smarter than everyone else. So like his little fucking quips and his smart assery plays into I'm smarter than you. I'm going to lean into that. I'm smarter than you.
Yes, and you almost kind of feel sorry for him because he doesn't know how to socially interact with people.
Yeah.
He's an asshole not because he wants to be an asshole, but just because that's how he is.
Right.
Whereas in this movie, they do their best to give him sympathetic angles of, oh, I love my wife, I miss my wife. Oh, he didn't kill his wife. But then also, like, I just want to help humanity. It's not about the money. It's about creating a utopia. The discussion he has with Giancarlo Esposito where he's like, well, utopias could become dystopias.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, clearly, like, we're supposed to feel like this guy has some amount of humanity to him. But then you get lines where he's like the most condescending person in the room. He feels like one of those neckbeard Redditors that you would come across who would say like, actually atheism is, and like all that shit.
Yeah.
Where he feels like very much like on a pedestal. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling like juxtaposing thoughts on this guy.
Yeah,
I don't really care what happens to him.
I guess I viewed him as like the director, so he could do whatever he wanted,
and that doesn't help either. When you've got like this big of a self-insert,
yes.
I can't help but just view the whole character as like an ego trip.
Yeah, it felt really like I'm playing all sides of the ball. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. I'm going to be a smartass here. I'm going to be sympathetic there. I'm going to listen, but I'm also going to tell you what to do. And yeah, he just comes out flat.
I there was a comment that I came across that really cracked me up that was like, if Caesar has the ability to stop time, why does he use it for building this like weird leaf park in the middle of New York?
Dude, yeah.
Instead of, helping people and like trying to actually make society better. Instead, he's just fucking around with architecture the whole time.
Dumbass architecture too. Like that the whole build
it kind
up
of looks like shit, doesn't it?
Yeah, like the whole build up to this thing, and I was like, I wonder what he's gonna do. Like we can stop time. He's the smartest guy in the world. He's gonna create this utopia. What's it gonna look like? And it looks like a fucking mushroom, just like branching out, and it like Alice in Wonderland, except with cars going up it. And I'm like, it
looks like the notebook of someone you'd find who's addicted to LSD.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like it's just shrooms going everywhere with all these leaf petals and stuff. And I'm just thinking, is this like Mother Nature, like getting back to Earth, getting more grounded?
Well, not only that, but you would think towards the end of the movie, it's like, okay, if he's accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, the entire city would be like this utopic, kind of like new wave design sort of thing. Nope, it's just like
skate park,
kind of like 3 square miles
in
the middle of New York.
You got our vert ramp.
And every other building is still the same.
Here's your half pipe.
Yeah.
Fuck. Dude,
it's like, that's what I mean. Like, either go all in or just don't do it.
He didn't know what to do. I really think he's just getting out all of his ideas and thoughts. And, if you want someone to listen to you, you go through and you say, this is what I got to say about this film. And I'm sure I've done it. I know where I think it's like I'm really saying a lot of creative stuff. And then it's like, I just listened to 40 minutes of someone ramble. You know? Like, I
described it to my friends after I went and saw it with them as old man yells at cloud, except it's for 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah. This is all the things that I see wrong. And it made me laugh that like the whole time there's so many different conflicts going on that you really don't know where it's going to get to. But this was the big one and they have a cut scene of him like coming back from his drug overdose, and he's like in his attic or whatever, and it's like showing him trying to be creative and how energy is supposed to move through people and how we're supposed to use like all these different forces, and we're becoming one with the planet essentially, and he's got like these kids up there and they got like bowling pins and blocks, and he's
tossing a basketball.
Yeah, and he's pointing at it, talking about gravity and how he can manifest this. And I'm like, okay, like they better come up with some kick-ass freaking whatever they're gonna do. And then it just turns into, LSD guy freaking rolling out there, from the 60s. Yeah.
Hey man, what if this staircase looked like a leaf?
Yeah.
Though? Like that'd be pretty cool.
You're transferring energy through pedals, and it just transports you to the next pedal, but that pedal could be like 50 feet away, and like you're just using your mind once you touch the pedal to submit your energy through the other pedal, and then all of a sudden, and then we have like, what was it? Escalator? Like what if we just stepped on this thing and it just moved you?
The
like
Megalon.
Those things at the airport.
Step on the Megalon.
Yeah. But they'll just move you. Like, won't that be? Oh, my God. And then Giancarlo Esposito trying to run up to his wife. I was thinking there's no way he makes it. I don't know how fast these things go, or if she
They're
can slow
going
this
like 2 miles an hour.
Yeah. It looked faster than that. It looked like it was going like at least 10, because she just got on there and like a little breeze went through her hair.
Well, it's like she would like keep going and she'd be like, honey, Cicero, get on here.
Yeah.
And he's like looking at her, and then like it does the thing where it like kind of cuts back and she's sort of towards the beginning again.
Yeah.
It like keeps bringing her back to the point where like they're almost level.
Like, there's no fucking way he's catching her.
No.
Like that, she's gone. Like that's like the hobos trying to jump on the train.
Yeah.
Like
It's like in a movie where characters run away from a disaster, and every single cut they get further away from the disaster.
yeah,
somehow.
exactly.
It's like that same thing, just on the most minimal scale
oh
possible.
god, it was yeah. Well, at this point, you're nitpicking everything that you're watching because it is just. Yeah.
Let's nitpick further. Can we name all the conflicts and everything going on in this movie?
No, this is an Easter egg hunt, but let's try.
So you've got Caesar Catalina. He's trying to create Megalopolis.
Yep.
You've got Franklin Cicero, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who is the mayor who hates Caesar, and he was the prosecuting attorney against him in the death of his wife, except they couldn't find the wife's body, so they just inferred that he killed her. But then he was proven innocent.
Yep.
So then he got away.
Yep.
And then you've got Wow Platinum, who is shacking up with Caesar. There's so many C names. I almost said Cicero.
Yep.
She's shacking up with Caesar. She's got this shitty like Entertainment Tonight show where she like interviews powerful people.
Yep.
And then like as soon as she gets tired of like his antics of like being a misunderstood genius, she doesn't see him going anywhere.
Well, technically, because there's a scene later that she says, "I still love you, and I'll use the money for us."
Right. She's clearly just like a gold digger or whatever.
I guess because.
At least the way.
Keep going on, because I could name everything that was confusing to me with all of these things.
So then you've got her going to Hamilton Crassus III, who is his uncle.
Yep.
Who she gets married to because he has a bunch of money and controls all the banks.
Yep.
But then his grandson is Claudio, and him and his sisters all fuck each other.
Yep.
And he hates Caesar more than the mayor for some reason.
Must be
it's a
because he's
childhood
smart.
It's a childhood thing where like he just harbors some like hatred towards him ever since they were kids.
Yep.
So then
Never clearly defined.
he at the wedding of Hamilton Crassus and Wow Platinum plays this doctored video where Adam Driver is fucking Grace Vanderwall, who is her character's name is Vesta Sweetwater.
She's a virgin. And
She presents herself as
money.
this virgin pledge where they're all pledging like hundreds of millions of dollars to her staying a virgin until she gets married, which I don't know what the fuck that was all about.
Church. It was about the church.
I'm
telling you, like I think he had a lot of metaphorical things in here that just, it was taking all the people that at this rich wig thing, and I don't know if it was at the Catholic Church, but the Virgin Mary,
right?
And they're pledging money to her for her. I don't know what she's gonna do with it.
Yeah, not fuck, I guess.
I don't know what the whole. I think it was just like, hey, here's money.
Give me money and I won't bone dudes.
Penance, is that what you go, or tithing when you go to
tithing?
Tithing when you go to, which I learned in Tree of Life. I remember the term. I just where you go and you donate towards the church for a good cause.
I used to do that quite a bit.
Yeah, so I think it was a metaphor for tithing, but then whatever it was didn't really help. And then it finds out that they're having sex, but weren't having sex because it's a doctored video.
It's not Adam Driver, but we're still led to believe that it is Vesta Sweetwater in the video.
Couldn't tell you. I thought
she's just fucking someone else.
They don't really do
They
it.
think she's like 16. She's actually 23. She's not even born in America.
Yeah, they found dirt on her to say, yeah, this is what's wrong with.
And then Caesar gets arrested, but then they let him go
because it's not underage.
Because they managed to prove that.
Which I love that. There's two things I love about these things with Mayor Cicero having just his documents wherever and is letting his daughter wherever they want to go. They break into some records place, which whatever.
Right.
Like they just break in. They find out all this information on this chick, which I don't know if it's public record. Why the fuck hadn't anyone else found it? Nope, she just gets it. The other one is Adam Driver.
Because she's the mayor's daughter and she's the only one that can find this shit.
Oh, yeah. Public records are kept secret, but they're not really, they're just records.
She goes to her dad and is like, hey, I can prove that Caesar is innocent in all this.
Yeah.
And the mayor is like, nah, I don't want to. And then she's like, okay, well, I'll just go anyway.
Yeah.
fuck you, and then goes and leaks it to the press, and they report on it. Caesar gets out of prison, and Vesta Sweetwater like turns a new leaf and is like this punk rock chick.
Oh yeah,
now.
she did. Yeah, which I think it was, she went to hell, or she was now, the sins of man instead of being the purity of man.
Right, like eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil as opposed to the tree of life.
Ooh.
Foreshadowing. So that whole business just like comes and goes. That it has nothing to do with
By the way,
grander
that's
scale.
40
of
minutes of the movie.
We didn't even mention that the whole time Natalie Emanuel as Julia Cicero, the daughter of the mayor, is shadowing Adam Driver this whole time. She like just sees him use and manipulate time one day where he uses it to like demolish a building. And for some reason, she's the only one who knows that he can do this.
Not only that, why he goes stop, and then he looks at the building and is like, "That'll do." I'm like, "It's just rubble. It's just a building falling down. The fuck are you looking at?"
Because he can't. Help me understand. He can't reverse time. It's not like he can go backwards. He can just stop time.
It's a fable. He can do whatever he needs to do with it, I guess. I have no idea.
The convenient plot device.
They never explained how he. I think they explained when his wife died, he was given that ability, and that's how he developed Megalon.
I was under the impression that he got that ability when he discovered the Megalon, when he dove in after his dead wife's body.
Yes.
To try and save her.
Yes.
And then he was like, "No, my wife." But then he's like, "Oh, but also Megalon, though." Like,
but we're gonna use it for good and not for money.
Ignore my dead wife over here. Oh, she's kind of a buzzkill.
And they never like, hey, here are the rules, or like, how easy would it have been when they're on that skyscraper with the fucking beams for him just to get into a soliloquy of, yeah, I can do this with it, I can do that with it, but the only thing I can't do is, like reverse time. Because maybe he would have, if his wife died, reverse time to, I don't know.
That would have actually been kind of a powerful, sort of like poignant thing that the movie could have inserted, is like, I can only stop time. I can't reverse time. If I could reverse time, I would have saved my wife.
Yeah, and that's
something.
That's why he's tortured. He's only got the ability to manipulate so much, but the only thing he wants to do, he can't do.
And that's what motivates him to create the best society possible, so that way they can avoid things like what happened to his wife happening again.
Yes. There we go. We just wrote half the fucking movie for the guy.
Coppola, we are on retainer. We'll send you our PayPal info.
That time stopping didn't do anything. Like, literally, it served no purpose in the movie.
No, he could just do it.
Yeah, that was it. And
he could fart and the clock just stops.
Yeah, and he looks at his dust and he like smells it and he goes, yeah. And then he just starts time again. Like, it. Yes, that was an annoyance among others.
So then he and Julia shack up.
Hey, people, we're about to just purge, okay? Because we got to get this off our chest.
It's funny because I thought that there was like a huge age gap between the two, because she looks so young in this movie and he looks like, I think they aged him up. Because Adam Driver's 40 and Natalie Emanuel's 35.
Yeah.
So I thought the age gap was like 10 plus years between the two.
I thought she was like out of high school or something. Like they were in the movie itself there, but she was going to go to doctorate school or law school and dropped out.
Medical school. I remember that scene because I watch it over and over again on YouTube because it's been memed, where he says something like, oh, you think 1 year of medical school entitles you to have access to my riches. And then she goes, entitles me? Mm-hmm. Entitles me? Yes. Entitles me? Yes. Like, that whole exchange has just been etched into the meme culture now.
This whole movie is going to be etched into the meme culture.
Oh, I said to my friends, there's going to be so many fucking memes of this movie when more people get their hands on it.
It's bad.
It's we're going to get flooded.
Yeah.
We kind of already are. That's a good segue into the dialogue of this. But should we? Okay.
Segue. There's no say.
Well, okay. Let's.
It's good. The movie. We're going to talk like the movie gave it to us.
Well, let's wrap up the conflict first, because we're in the middle of that still. So they have a baby, and then they also like try to get Mayor Cicero to sign off on Megalopolis. He disagrees with it because he hates Caesar. one of Claudio's underlings who just was in a band one day and he just like decided to follow Claudio, and now he's like his right hand man with this like weird forehead tattoo.
That's the only time I laughed in this thing.
Right.
When the old man's like reading the newspaper.
Oh, I was laughing a ton at this movie. Believe me.
I was not. I was.
But then he gets his guy to shoot Adam Driver in the face.
Yes.
But then it just so happens that they can use the Megalon to repair his face. And then in a moment that I will forever compare to when Neil Breen takes the bandage off in Fateful Findings.
Oh, God.
Is the moment that Adam Driver comes in to Hamilton Crassus III's office. Claudio's there, Wild Platinum's there. They're trying to rub it in his face, literally, because his face is shot off. And then he's like, Uno reverse card, motherfucker. He takes his bandage off. He looks like a X-Man character. Like, he's got his face half gold, and it's just
Harvey Dent.
Yeah, and like the editing choice where like they spread him out and they like double, like triple, quadruple his image in the movie, and it's just like, oh my God, his face, why does he look like this? And then you think like, oh, is he gonna look like this the rest of the film? Nope, it just heals him. Apparently Megalon just heals you.
No.
You have a few too few no's in there. It's more like no. I remember. I wish I would have counted how many no's there were.
It's bizarre.
It was very
bizarre.
And then to kind of wrap this up, fucking Wow Platinum and Shia LaBeouf get together in a scene that I can only describe as just
jarring.
Francis Ford Coppola rubbing it out between his pant leg.
Had to have.
Where Aubrey Plaza straddles Shia LaBeouf's face while he goes to town, and he's yelling like, yes, Auntie Wow, while she's like trying to tell him how to usurp his uncle in order to get control of his banking company.
BDSM or little... Yeah.
He gets him to sign he gets Hamilton to sign over the company to him. Hamilton realizes this, has like a stroke, and then doubles over.
Fake stroke.
Well, that's revealed later. Where you cut to John Voight and he's in his office and he's like, those sons of bitches, they're not going to get my company, blah, blah, blah. And then like he hears them coming and he's like, oh, I got to go into disabled mode. And then he goes into his bed. He says my favorite line in the entire movie. He's laying in bed while Platinum and Claudio Pulcher come into the room. They're going to rub it in his face that they're together and that they've got control. And he's got this thing sticking out from under the sheet. And he says, what do you think of this boner I've got?
Yep.
In a line that had me cackling in the movie theater, where I just said to myself, like, there's no way this movie gets past a 3 out of 10 after that line.
By the way, people, this is all with 15 minutes left in the film.
So then he reveals that it's not, in fact, a boner, that he is cognizant, and that he's got a crossbow, and he shoots Wild Platinum with it and kills her. And then he shoots Claudio in the ass 2 times. He runs out. He gets the arrows pulled out. An angry mob comes because they realize that he's been talking nothing but shit the entire time, and so they string him up while he screams, "Don't tread on me." And then at the end, fucking Caesar and Cicero work their shit out, and then they live happily ever after the end.
Yeah.
And that's...
turned into a utopia.
Yes.
Civilization was cured.
That is the conflict of the film. The dialogue, as we've displayed earlier, is atrocious. I think not only in its writing but its delivery. I think a lot of the acting in this is just... And here's another thing too. Notice how in the entire description of the plot of this movie, not once did we mention Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman serves no purpose in this film other than, I truly believe, to just put another big name on the poster.
That's what I'm saying. He called all his buddies, like, or whoever he could get to get in this thing, because Lawrence Fishburne's the same way.
I didn't even mention Lawrence Fishburne at all. He literally just plays Adam Driver's assistant, basically.
Yeah, and he's the narrator of the film, which I also don't... He's the one telling us of this fable.
Yeah.
Like through his accord? Because at one point
He's the narrator because he's got a good voice.
He's narrating, and then it turns into him, and it shows him on screen reading it, and then he like closes his journal and he says, "Well, shit, now you guys can just see for yourselves," or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, okay." Like they're acknowledging that he's kind of led us to this point. Yeah.
Yeah. There's Jesus Christ. There's
Dude, this
so
whole
much.
thing's fucking confusing, dude. There's no so
It's very confusing.
conflict. Adam Driver wants to make a utopia. Confusing part. What are the motivations and why? Right? There's nothing put in there. Let's see. Mayor Cicero is losing the city or wants to become mayor.
But he is mayor.
Yeah. And okay, there's no election. Okay, so how is that a conflict then? It's just him just getting heckled. But that's what happens to all politicians.
Right.
Claudio wants to take over the city or get more money or take down Adam Driver. Why? Because they had a problem in childhood, never really clearly defined. While Platinum goes and she wants to be with the Carassus guy to get money, but
I get tripped up on the names so bad.
Cicero, Caesar, Carassus, Claudio. Yeah, but then it's later revealed that she still loves Caesar and that she's going to get the money to go back to him. Let's see. Which that doesn't make sense. You get the very end conflict of them having to steal the money from Carassus, which don't get either because, I mean, she's already with him and just has to wait till he's dead. Oh, no. They talked about the prenup. You got to sign a prenup.
Yeah.
Make sure that she doesn't get it.
Yeah, where he's like, I'm old, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah. Which maybe she picked up because it's never like, there's no dialogue of that happening where she figures out that she's not getting any money.
Right.
Yeah. Just a lot of confusing whys. And then
Half-baked concepts that are touched upon and then just left there.
they don't even go into the wife's murder. That is such a big deal in the first act, whatever act.
When he like goes and like visits the bed and you think like, oh, is she in there? And then it cuts to his point of view and she's not.
Oh, by the way, they're out there in a foggy night. She loses the car and somehow then sneaks up. So he's told, all right.
Also, and why is Claudio in that scene trying to get like a scoop of like what he's doing?
I don't know.
And it just amounts to nothing. He's just like no longer a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't tell you. I really that there was no purpose for him being there whatsoever because it doesn't come back to him doing anything about it or using it.
No.
And then also Caesar, who's this fucking genius, has gone out of his way to not get fouled, curtailed whatsoever. They just have her in the next scene in the door. Like,
yeah, turns out he's the easiest person to follow in the world.
Dude, when he walked into that building, there was like a bunch of people in there, right? It wasn't just like the doorman answering and going, "Oh, thank God it's just you, sir," and like walking him up. Like, there's people shuffling about, and she just walks up and she's standing in the doorway. What? I'm like, no one questioned her.
She pulled the "I'm with him"
Yeah.
card when she walked in.
He told me to follow him up here, just be a couple steps behind.
Yeah. He said I could go. So yeah, there's so much just like half baked into this that I don't know. It just this is what you get when it's just like an over bloated mess.
Oh my God. So I'm
prime example of it.
The Cicero thing and Caesar, it was just all the half tension there.
The thing with
the
like
wife and him hating him.
Yeah, and like how Giancarlo Esposito is gonna like reveal that he wasn't like honest about the verdict. So then, or like his pursuit of this lawsuit in the first place, or like the criminal charges.
On me.
So then he's like, I will reveal myself to be a piece of shit if you stop dating my daughter.
And I don't know if he did.
No, he didn't. Like he goes in there and he's like, hey, stop banging my daughter. If you do, I will reveal myself to be a piece of shit. The city is yours. And Adam Driver's like, nah, I'm good. And then that's it. That's like the end of it. Right?
Oh, that's what happened. I don't remember because there was some disconnect between the whatever her name is, Natalie.
Yeah.
Natalie and Caesar, after that point, there's a little bit of disconnect because then he gets shot and then she comes back to him.
Right, because I thought, for a moment, okay, maybe he did agree to it, and then she's like, oh, I'm just going to quickly say hi to him, as if, like, she knows what's up.
Yeah.
But then he gets shot, and then everything's back to how it was before. It's like, oh, he gets shot, and then all rules are out of the window.
Yep.
I don't fucking know, man.
I also liked. I just have to like. You want to know what you're in for? The Mayor Cicero has his whole court filings and evidence clearly marked, labeled in a very easy to follow manner. So Natalie goes home and pulls up the case to look at what he did. Kyle, who the fuck just has on their mantelpiece the one case that they lost and readily and easily available to go through and look at?
Well, it's what is that thing called in movies? The gun on the shelf or whatever.
There was one. Okay.
My brain is melted, so these concepts are eluding me.
I am like looking at the smoking gun or whatever you gotta. One of the things was just titled evidence,
right?
And like he pulled it up, and it was newspaper articles.
Mm-hmm.
He used newspaper articles for evidence.
Evidence.
Journalism
is evidence, isn't it?
That would be you pulling up Wiki to get the Hernandez brothers.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? You can't do something fucking more clever. Just a little something. That's all I'm asking. Make it. She just walked into the nightstand, pulled up evidence, and then read from the Daily Herald. And that was it. That was like that's what we found that we were using to prosecute him. No wonder he got off fucking clean.
Mm-hmm. It feels like a toddler got a hold of the screenplay and just did what he wanted to do with the characters in the story. Because you can easily picture someone sitting at the computer going like, but then he gets shot in the face, but then the Megalon saves him, and then the mayor comes and says, hey, I don't like you. And then Adam Driver says, oh, it's okay. I'll still see your daughter. And then at the end, they all get together and they kiss, and it's all good.
See, yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah.
And that's the basic sentiment of how I feel about this movie.
This movie was shit.
Really quickly before we wrap up, because we do need to get to another meaty discussion on Tree of Life. The editing of this was particularly bad.
You don't say.
There were scenes specifically with that moment where he approaches him with the red envelope, where it goes from a frame of Giancarlo Esposito and it cuts to another angle of Giancarlo Esposito. That's kind of a rule that you're not supposed to break. And there were many moments like that in this movie where it just felt like the timing of everything was off. The stilted dialogue was not helping how this movie was cut at all. The camera placement and the blocking felt like the most straightforward, simple thing that you could think of. Movies like Godfather Part 1 and 2 and Apocalypse Now are very cinematically beautiful films where like everything being framed feels like it has a purpose. There's artistry to it. There's a lot going into the visual style of all of those movies. And this one, that's kind of why I use the term lazy. It feels very straightforward to a fault. It feels very stilted and stale.
Yeah, I also think an 85-year-old man discovering CGI for the first time doesn't help any sort of direct, because all that
he found it in a cave with a box of scraps.
You know what I'm saying, like the Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Godfather 2, like there's a bunch of props and there's sets, but we're shooting on location, and I know what objects I want to use or get into the frame, and now you have CGI and you're asking this guy who's got a fogged brain to fucking remember what he's trying. Like that's probably why Central Park looked like Central Park when he's going for a jog, because he's like, I don't want to CGI this. I can use this stuff. So, I don't want it. Lazy is unpassionate. This thing felt
dispassionate.
No, I
disproportional.
What I call this is the most pretentious way of being profound, and I think
abso-fucking-lutely.
I think that's why I don't think it was being lazy. I just think that biting more than, or chewing up more than he could bite, or biting more than he could chew. I mean, this dude took a fucking shoe and tried to cram it into his mouth. You know, like, there's no way. And what you get is what you get. I mean, and it's 2 hours and 18 minutes. This thing could have easily been 4.5 hours. You know,
I don't know about easily. It would not have been easy for any of us.
No,
believe me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this thing is built for being on Broadway over 3 days. Like,
yeah,
as much as he tried to cram in, there's no way. He's taken just these phrases and like they're quoting Marcus Aurelius on stuff about philosophy and and it's just throwaway lines.
Yes.
Like, and you know he wants it to be something meaningful
he wants
and special.
it to be very profound with the way that he has Adam Driver recite his dialogue.
Yes.
And the narration of Lawrence Fishburne and these statue title cards that come up that have like some Roman quote on them.
Yes.
He wants this to feel grand, and it just face plants.
Oh, big yes. Yes. Not even close. Face planting is being generous.
Escalator.
Yeah, I like that
falling down an up escalator.
Yeah, he just got on that escalator and never got off. Just keep walking in the same spot.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up this discussion. Let's get into ratings. You summated this, so I'll go first.
Okay.
I have a list of films that I have seen this year that are the worst of this year so far. And let me pull that up. So I have 7 entries on here right now. Number 1 is Madam Web.
Yep.
Number 2 is Unfrosted, the Jerry Seinfeld Pop-Tart movie that was on Netflix.
Man.
God awful, don't watch it.
Okay.
Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver,
Ooh.
because I hate myself and I wanted to see what this was about. Number 4 was Borderlands, another Lionsgate hit. One after another between that and The Crow and this movie. Triple decker, let me tell you. Number 5, Megalopolis. Sits very comfortably in that spot past The Crow and The Watchers. All these movies have one thing in common, especially like 2 through 5, is that I was sort of just baffled at what I was seeing, especially with this movie, with how just messy it was. It is a storied hell of a production that you can go and read about, and it'll be fascinating from the standpoint of watching this movie, knowing what happened, and piecing together everything that went wrong. And we did our best to do that in this discussion, and I think we did a very good job of trying to break it down. But how do you ultimately break a movie down like this, where it just feels like it stayed in the oven way too long and now it burned the house down? This is a 2 out of 10 from me.
Yeah. There aren't a lot of movies that you're just confused by. There aren't a lot of movies where they try to make statements about things happening around them or tying in events. This thing managed to do it all, and for 2 hours and 18 minutes do nothing. I knew that this was like I knew it was bad. There's a rating I never really give a film, and this is where it's at, is when that Annie Wow scene happened with Shia LaBeouf, and I was just looking at my watch because I was ready for this thing to be over, and I go, there's 15 minutes left in this film. And we're now having the climax is a climax, and we're going to have that with Jon Voight. Like, so fucking, oh God, I can't even think of the word, sophomoric, you know?
That's a good word to use.
Yes. And this is how we're wrapping up the film. This is a 3 out of 10.
Yep.
I don't think that there's anything really redeemable about this besides being able to have a couple beers with some friends if they've seen it and talk with them at a dinner party and just laugh about how bad it is. Mm-hmm. And I hate saying that about films, but this is there.
Well, speaking of meaty discussions, I think that we're also going to have one of those with my film recommendation for this episode, The Tree of Life. And I believe at the end of the previous episode, and we touched on this before we recorded, you had mentioned the 3-hour-long version. We both figured out that version is almost exclusively available on Criterion. Neither of us have that. So we just decided to do the theatrical release, the 2-hour and I think, 16-minute version?
18? Well, might be 16.
Very similar runtime to Megalopolis. But I recommended this film because this is one that I feel like was invoked quite a bit throughout the run of this podcast, specifically from you, with this sentiment of, this is a movie that is a slog. I don't really want to revisit this again. But because it's been brought up so many times, I thought it was time. We needed to discuss Tree of Life from Terrence Malick.
Yes.
And I will do my best to summate this, and then we'll get into it. So this is a 2011 experimental coming-of-age drama film directed and written by Terrence Malick. It stars Brad Pitt as Mr. O'Brien, Jessica Chastain as Mrs. O'Brien, and then Sean Penn as adult Jack O'Brien, who is portrayed by Hunter McCracken as I believe, 10-year-old boy, the 10-year-old version of the character. And you've got other actors portraying him even younger, but he's essentially the one that we stick with the most in this film.
Yep.
And this is a sort of kind of epic tale of this family growing up in 1940s Waco, Texas, where the father is played by Brad Pitt, and he's a very stern, very kind of like old school, like old time beliefs sort of father, where he believes that you need to be tough, and to survive in this world, you gotta not be good all the time. But Jessica Chastain is sort of the opposite of that, where she's very kind of like free-spirited. She's always running around. She's always got like this smile on her face when things are going well. And she's kind of more loose with it. And so then you've got this boy's perspective of these two different parenting styles and how that forms him as a character and informs the decisions later on in the movie. Between that, you've also got intercut the future version of Jack, where you see where he is. He's this architect. He's kind of downtrodden a little bit. He's sort of unhappy with how things are. And that is also intercut with the inception of the universe.
Yep.
And evolution, dinosaurs, what wiped them out, all these different sort of universal ethereal things that we get to see very artfully displayed in this movie. And I guess I'll just rip the bandage and say this right now. I didn't hate this movie. I actually liked it. I didn't love it. I almost kind of expected to go into this with the thought of, this is going to be my type of shit. I normally love experimental, very visually stylistic movies that you can sort of interpret a lot from. And I walked away from this enjoying what I viewed, but I don't think I got out of it as much as I personally would have liked.
Okay.
And that's kind of my main perspective on it. I've been teeing up how you felt about this movie, how you've referenced it throughout previous episodes. So I'm going to kind of let you take this next turn here and sort of describe what your thoughts are on this movie from when you saw it previously to your more recent viewing.
So the first time we watched this, and I'm still fairly certain on it, it came out, Malick was coming back. I think he hadn't done a film since The Thin Red Line.
I'll look up his filmography while you're
because The Thin Red Line was 97, 99.
Thin Red Line was 98.
98.
And then
how about that?
he had The New World in 2005.
Yes.
The one with Colin Farrell.
Yeah. And I think that was a bomb.
And then after that was The Tree of Life.
Yeah, and I don't know if a lot of people talked about The New World or if it just kind of went away. Like, I don't know how he keeps getting major film releases. Well, I guess it's only been 3 that I know of. Well, maybe 5.
He's got quite the filmography, actually, and he's coming out with a new movie sometime soon.
Yeah.
That's got Mark Rylance, Ben Kingsley, Joseph Fiennes. I think it's supposed to be like a biblical drama.
Interesting.
Which, given his filmography, makes sense.
Passion of the Christ 2.
That actually is being made.
Hamlet 2. Yeah, I know. I saw a trailer for it, a preview for it. No, so we this was like a big deal, and my buddy is a he's a cinematographer. He kind of helps out with like we're in going into college. That's what he's gonna do. So like this movie comes out and it's Malik, and he was an artist that he does have a healthy filmography, but like
yes. I should also mention too, cinematographer was Emmanuel Lubezki.
Yes,
who. If that name sounds familiar, he's done a lot of visually stunning movies like The Revenant, a lot of other Terrence Malick movies.
Yeah. And they actually had, the funny thing is on this, I read on the trivia, is that they had a set of rules for filming this thing, which you have to applaud, that they said this is like when we're filming it, like we can't do this with the film, like the aspect ratio has to be this, like we can only do a natural lighting. Like they set up a bunch of rules for it. So like hearing more about that, and learning that, okay, like this isn't just like a guy walking around with a video recorder taping Jessica Chastain and chasing butterflies in the street. Like they had an idea about what they wanted to do and they executed it well. First time I saw it, I very young into my movie going. I liked action films. I liked stories that I could kind of get behind that were maybe a little bit more of the heroic vein, not totally experimental, and
something with a bit of a more narrative arc.
Yes, and I'm not, even now. I mean, I had to read something. One of the things I read helped me out. And I shouldn't even say it like that. It wasn't a review. It was a synopsis of the film. And I was like, oh, okay. Like now I can kind of play into that while I watch this thing again.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This was sort of a Wikipedia kind of need to refresh myself type of deal.
Like imagine going through this and just going like he creates time and it's about evolution, man. And there's dinosaurs. Like you're like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna see.
It's like, okay, Francis, let's calm down.
Yeah, I'm gonna see some like really insane shit here with maybe a synced up storyline. No, not the case. Just people whispering into the camera with him chasing people around in this majestical view. Like no clue what's going on. So that was the first time I saw it. This thing, I'm pretty sure we watched the 3 hour 9 minute version of it. I felt like it was 6 hours long. I think I was coming off a hangover and it was like, man, this seems about all right. Like,
so you're saying the best condition to watch this type of movie?
I had McDonald's.
Ideal.
I was laying on the couch. It was Sunday afternoon.
McDonald's doesn't sound too bad right now.
Dude, imagine getting McDonald's at like watching this thing, just being able to kind of chip away at like a quarter pounder with some fries and just having this go down. Like you're thinking like, all right, like I'm going to have a good meal with a good movie, It's 2 p.m. laying on the couch and like I pretty sure I almost fell asleep a couple times in this thing. Mm-hmm. So no, on the next viewing I was not enthralled. But I read something on IMDb that really helped me out understand what the story was about or what he was attempting to do.
Yes.
And it's the confliction between the roles and the family dynamic with a young kid discovering his way in life, and the people that are imprinting on him are showing him, especially in adolescence, as he's going into this discovery mode of his identity, essentially, and playing against his psychology. A lot more of it made sense this time going through it, and there are a lot of, I don't want to say profound statements or more philosophical, or the look into psychology in the most stalkerish way that you could probably do it, in terms of a young boy coming to terms with who he is or where he's going.
There's
in
something
life.
Specific being touched on in this film.
Yes, and I don't know. I can look it up. I read somewhere that he was a Rhodes Scholar. Malik went to Oxford. He has like a degree in philosophy and something else. So like he's a very intelligent guy. Mm-hmm. And so like you've got an intelligent filmmaker, unlike the last one, that is doing something profound, something subtle, but is one of the hardest things to kind of grasp on as a human being, and the psychology of what it means to be a human. And there's like some of the Freud stuff popped in there, as he's going through. It was a lot more philosophical in the sense of viewing this thing. Yes. I would say on this viewing, it was almost to the level of viewing that I had with Stalker.
I felt like that comparison was going to come up with this viewing. And I myself almost felt the same way physically watching this film that I did with Stalker, in that, and I love Stalker. I think that movie has a lot going on for it.
Same.
Philosophically. There's a lot you could glean from it. It's one of those movies where different people could watch it and get totally different interpretations of what's happening.
I think this one's the same way.
Yeah, and it's also very similar in that, I appreciated visually what was going on. My body was struggling a little bit to keep up with the film itself. Like, just the pacing of it. The very relaxed way it presents itself, like the crashing waves in the background of like any given scene.
I don't want to be like you, yet I'm turning into you.
It's like this movie almost functions as like an ASMR type of situation.
Why didn't you help me?
Right, and it's just very kind of like, it's quiet, it's intimate, it's like, it's indirect, but it's also direct in a lot of ways. Like, it's very kind of naked in its view of like what it's trying to portray, which, like you said, is that sort of kind of like grace versus nature type of struggle of, do I grow up and be a kind person? Do I be an accepting human being, or do I try to like fight against it and be stern in my own cadence?
So,
like father versus mother type of deal.
One of the I guess it's just kind of everything lining up. So Jasmine, she had the day off, so
humble brag.
I know, right? So she's watching, the Mormon Wives or whatever in the other room, and
the Mormon Wives.
I don't know. It's something on HBO. It's like it's on HBO. It's been going on. This guy married 4 gals, and he's a Mormon.
Oh, you mean the sister wives?
Yeah, sister wife. So she's into that thing, and so I was breaking down film, or I was trying to get some film up and going. So I had some football stuff, and so I was like, I'm not going to get into this thing, and I'm just going to have this going on and pay attention with this, so I can actually pick up. And I think 15, 20 minutes go by that we kind of get past the Sean Penn stuff, which is all a little, I don't want to say odd, but it's like, I can't quite remember what the inciting incident is that happens, and they never touched on it. I'm assuming one of the brothers, he died or committed suicide, or
so the timeline is a bit wonky.
Yeah,
because it opens with the family learning that the brothers died. Like, I think it's the middle brother, right? The blonde one.
I couldn't tell. Like, it's I don't think they ever say a name or say it's. So literally, it's like she's reading a letter.
The way that and the only reason I think it's the middle brother is because the way the movie kind of focuses on him as like a source of pathos.
Yes.
And how the end sequence of them all on the beach is like very centered on like him as an emotional core.
Yes.
So to me, that's what told me that it was that brother specifically.
I agree with you. It was never clearly outlined or defined.
And I had to look it up too. I guess he died when he was 19, so he wasn't even like a child when he supposedly passed away, and they don't tell you how he passed away.
How the fuck did someone just or maybe it's in the extended version or something.
Maybe my assumption, and this is just an assumption on my part, he's 19, he's growing up, it's like goes from the 40s to 50s to 60s.
Yep.
He dies in Vietnam or like some other military conflict.
Well, that's what
because he got drafted.
I agree, because she got a letter.
Yes.
She read the letter and started like bawling, and I was like,
yep.
Oh. And then I didn't know who Sean Penn was at the time. I was like, is Sean Penn the middle brother, and the older brother killed himself or died? And
so then my thought was, because I initially thought, oh, he was still a kid when he died, because Jessica Chastain and Brad Pitt don't look like they've aged at all. Compared to like when when the kids are kids and they're raising them. Maybe, I don't know.
He had glasses on. He had I thought he had
maybe
aged
I needed glasses because I didn't see
but
too
the
much
timeline's
of a
off because she doesn't look any different, and then he does, and he gets a phone call, and he's out by the jets on the hangar, and I'm like, but I don't know if this is because some of the feel with the movie's elicited with memories.
Yes.
Like, it's supposed to be more so of going through the mind of someone who's looking back.
It's supposed to be. It's purposefully fragmented.
Yes,
and kind of not foggy, but sort of like indirect in that way with like the filmmaking.
Yes.
You're not like really seeing anything like that dead on. It feels very peripheral that way.
Yeah. That's a great word for it. Yes. So in that going on, it's hard to tell if we're going through memories, if this happened
right.
in
How literal am I
1958.
supposed to take this?
Yeah, and Brad Pitt now he's getting another phone call from Hunter, or what was it, Hunter McCracken? What was Jack? He's getting a phone call from Jack, and Jack's Sean Penn now. Like, it's kind of skirting around timelines. So that's why I have no idea. That's why but it makes sense that it would have been Vietnam, and because she received a letter, and that part, like when he got the phone call, but then at the same token, it's like, I don't know if this is in the 70s now, and Jack's calling again because this day's a very important day for Sean Penn that he alludes to or says. Yeah. And it's a very important day for me.
It's so interesting, me going into this movie thinking that I was going to be like 100% on board. And it's not that I don't like this movie at all. I do like this film.
Right.
Because there's kind of like this sort of relationship that you and I have with movies where a lot of the time our tastes overlap.
Yes.
Like there's movies that we both absolutely love that we can just like wax poetic about hours on end.
Yes.
And then you've got something like this that is essentially like 80% a visual kind of piece,
right,
where there's not much in the way of direct narrative. A lot of what takes place, you're supposed to kind of infer visually of what's going on between like these montages and these intercuts of like different time periods, who these characters are, how they behave, how they act towards each other. It's a very like kind of like what I said earlier, peripheral view of things going on with this family. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be like a clear kind of divide between Mac and I could see why he's not a huge fan of this movie, is that you don't get like a direct narrative. You don't get that much in the way of connectivity with the characters, other than maybe Hunter McCracken as the small boy, because you're kind of curious of like where he's going to go. But at the same time, there is this detachment there that you just inherently get when you're watching something almost purely from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, and there's more going on than if you're watching talking pictures, and yeah, you're not going to get much out of this. And older Mac watching this, or younger Mac watching this thing without having like a clear storyline or a central character, and you're just kind of going through, very hard to get attached to anything in the film. Right?
Yes.
Like if you're not kind of picking up. And so I'm watching this with Jasmine. She decided to stay up, and I gave her kind of the synopsis because she walked out. She was like enthralled with this film. I was like, how can you tell? And all of a sudden we're watching it, and we were having discussions while we're watching it, and it made a lot more sense. And I still don't think I picked up on the half of it, but we were talking about the young boy and the role of the family and his struggle with the ego versus the id. If you're looking at Freudian, where the mom may have been a little bit more of the ego and the dad more of the id, and that kind of confusion in the battle of even within yourself of, well, my role models, the role, the family dynamic, and the role within the family of what you have to do. You're telling me one thing, and you're doing something else.
Yeah, I think there's a moment where Brad Pitt literally says, "Do as I say, not as I do."
Yeah.
To the son.
Yeah.
And you can tell that that's a through line that just carries throughout the rest of the movie.
Oh, without there's a lot of it in there. I mean, he goes, he's like, you tell me not to cuss and swear, and yet you insult people all the time. You tell me to. How am I supposed to be these things or do these things, yet you don't live up to what you're preaching, And the boy's struggling and trying to understand where he's supposed to go to in life, or what he's supposed to ground himself on. And he's in, this adolescent stage where, the younger boys, Brad Pitt, can just tell him, hey, do this, and they'll do it. There's no curiosity, there's no questioning, there's nothing behind the terms of what he's saying other than you are a superior figure to who I am. I will listen to you because you're my dad. Whereas Jack all of a sudden is getting into this role of, Well, you say don't worry about money, yet you constantly talk about how everyone else is better off than us because they got lucky or they got money. You know, like he's picking up on these things, and there's just these small things that happen. Like, it was kind of funny. I'm watching Brad Pitt in this thing. I was like, yeah, he's not the greatest dad, but like, he's not awful.
He's not like a monster. He's just
right.
He's a very of the time father figure in like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah,
who disciplines his kids a little too harshly and sort of has those kind of old world, old value views of like, oh, you know, if you work hard, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, good things will happen, but you got to be tough. You can't be like a little pansy pussy boy.
Yeah.
Like he's not the best dad, but he's not the worst dad.
That's what I'm saying. Like yes.
They don't make him out to be like a totally irredeemable piece of shit.
Right.
Like, he's clearly got some history with
he's
himself.
Jaded by life.
He's jaded by life. He feels like life kind of dealt him a bad deal in that he should be greater than he is now.
Yes.
Clearly, with like how talented he is at the piano, he said, "Oh, I could have been something with this, you know, but instead I chose to go."
He's going to patent law. He's got patents. You want to patent your idea so no one can steal them from you. Like, it was kind of like, that was kind of like a, not necessarily profound, but like, oh man, like you gotta.
There's like,
you're kind of smart if you're writing down patents and coming
Yeah.
up with stuff to protect future ideas that you just can't quite profit on.
there's
yet.
clearly ambition underneath the surface,
Yes.
but you can tell he's just kind of weighed down by like life or his career or like his family, whatever it is
Yes.
like getting to the core of him. And he takes it out on his family sometimes.
Yes.
Where like those frustrations build up, they do something that just rubs him the wrong way, and then he lashes out.
Yep.
And he does it under the guise of, I'm just a strict father, you have to do what I say, but then it goes a little bit too far sometimes. And I think it's interesting, the idea of when you're a child and you get to the point where you kind of see that your parents aren't these infallible things, like they're not these gods that have raised you up, and they're not perfect.
Yes.
You know, they have flaws, they're human beings. You see them in moments of like weakness or vulnerability or like whatever it is, and you come to this realization as a child of like, oh shit, like they're just not that different from me. They're figuring shit out as well. Like, they've got their own shit. How do I react to this as a child? And I think a good reason why he kind of sets it in that time period, not just to show like the juxtaposition of like child Jack with adult Jack, but also to see how those sentiments are a little bit more plainly brought out.
Yeah.
You portray something like that in a more modern sense. And I think some of that might get lost in the ideas of, oh, you know, we're set in this time period, so we have to touch on this. We have to touch on this sort of thing. Like, oh, you know, maybe like the career's different, or maybe it's not as straightforward. Whereas this, because it's such a simple time period, you get to view that in a more direct and honest way.
Yeah.
Whereas like otherwise it might be something that's not as plain to you or not as obvious.
Well, yes.
Am I making any sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I agree. And I think he uses older, I mean, not to say he uses it, but there's a good juxtaposition with older Sean Penn, and he's an architect, and he's going up into these skyscrapers, and all of a sudden the world around you even seems more stimulated than what we were seeing just with them running through the streets.
Yeah,
you know,
there's a lot more business going on,
Yes.
quite literally and figuratively.
And I think it's a simpler time, but also even as kids, even if you did it in a modern sense to eliminate all of the clutter going on around you, because like he could have did this in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. There would just been more bicycles and cars and maybe like a TV on, you know. I think he's doing it as like the mind's a sandbox, and we're taking all of like this new stimulus in, kind of just for us as audience members for the first time, becoming recognizable and understanding it, but we don't want to start adding more to it, because I think it would lose a little bit of the importance on what we're supposed to be focusing on, and that's being in the mind of Jack and going around with Jack and kind of taking all of this new stuff in. So I mean, it was smart. It was creatively done, and it was well scripted that way, you know. And
and it's not just like what he experiences through, like his father and everything going on with that emotional connection,
Right.
but also just like the way it is filmed, where you got scenes of him like just running around in the yard, or like touching trees, he's touching water, he's swimming around. It's like you get a lot of that sort of secondhand sensory type of experience that this kid is having.
Yes.
So it sort of takes you back to those moments when you're a child and you're like, okay, how is this different or similar to how I experienced the world growing up?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I really like that. I think that the strongest part of this movie is that kind of focus on childhood Jack and his upbringing and how he deals with things thrown his way and who he turns out to be.
Yeah.
I think that is my favorite part of the movie. I mentioned earlier that...
Yeah, same here, because the other two parts were like, whatever.
Well, and that's sort of not... I don't want to say that I 100% agree with that, but I do think that there is something to be said that this movie, I think, could have been presented in a way that would be more effective. I think when you have beautifully done scenes of like all these special effects and like the birth of the universe and like the concept of nature flourishing and evolution and the dinosaurs and like all these concrete subjects being presented in an abstract way, almost, you've got beautiful imagery, but then you've also got this pacing issue where it doesn't I can tell what he's going for, but at the same time it almost feels like he wants to make two separate movies and try to coalesce them into one thing. I
guess one of the things that and that was kind of the first time watching it, it was just like first time watching it, like, oh, he's going for that, didn't make sense. But some of it's the evolution of man and where it's come from, essentially from the cosmos and the Big Bang, right, up until where we're at now and discovering. Yeah. I mean, we've got, all of a sudden we have the ability to freely think, to process thoughts. One of the interesting things I didn't know or found out just reading through trivia, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a part with the dinosaur, right? And it's walking up and it sees another wounded dinosaur and it has the ability to kill it and eat it. Mm-hmm. And instead it walks away. And
it like puts the foot on its neck and then it lifts it up, puts it on again, and then decides to let it live. It was supposed to be,
Malik said that was the first, he wanted to capture the first thought of a animal being a utilitarian sense of making a decision of right versus wrong. Mm-hmm. And so he highlights or puts in some of these things in there as we've kind of grown to see where we get to the next human being. And that's why Jack has a name. I almost wish it was just older brother, as in the sense to make it so general in the sense of us being humans as opposed to focusing on the character.
Like you almost view him the same way you'd view the dinosaurs.
Yes, exactly. And not we've kind of come up as we're still portraying man and the evolution and the being a man and the creating of the conscious, and all that stuff. Like, I wish they almost just had the sense of everyone's just got a general name. And that way it's mother, father, older brother, middle brother, younger brother, no one's got names. Is not to say that they don't have an identity, but now all of a sudden it's not necessarily a person that we're watching that has distinct features, but yet just another human being going through and discovering his way in life and dealing with some of the psychological things that have been studied and talked about, with the role of like one of the big things was the role of the family dynamic and how we've actually come to the point now is you come from that dinosaur who has that first thought of, boy, this isn't the right thing to do, to all of a sudden now we're understanding what our role is within our family dynamic and what other people have in terms of imprinting on us or creating us and helping our decisions on who we want to be. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very, very heady.
Yeah. I almost kind of viewed it as the indifference of the universe versus the nature of life. In a way, where life is almost, as it evolves and as it changes, sort of designed to push against that indifference, and it becomes this sort of a kind of ethical thing of, oh, I have life, and therefore I have responsibility to not only myself but to the other forms of life around me.
Yeah.
You know, when we're growing up, we're taught to, you know, love and respect each other, to respect animals, and to respect nature and the life around us, where it's kind of interesting how we view it that way when the greater universe doesn't view us in any way at all. Like it's wholly indifferent to who we are and what we become as we're growing up. Like it's sort of like that juxtaposing.
The universe
notion.
doesn't have conscience, so it doesn't have any sort of difference or indifference.
And that was another thing I took away from this too. The other big thing that I could find in connectivity of the narrative versus the visualization is just how insignificant we are compared to all these different things going on that we don't even think about happening in the universe. And how, look at how small Jack's problems are and how insignificant his family is when you put it up against the universe being birthed into existence.
Yeah.
And like light being created and the planet coming together and like the dinosaurs and all these different things.
Yeah.
And this kid's worried about whether or not he's going to be a good person is just kind of very fascinating to me. And I don't entirely know if it connects all that well. That's kind of like my big hang up on this movie.
Yeah.
That and the fact that like the pacing is what it is. I don't know if I could sit through a whole 3-hour version of this. I say that, but I know I could. I don't know if I'd
this
love
thing was
it.
45 minutes longer and you're still sitting through it.
Right.
Maybe
and
a couple more glances at the watch.
like I kind of can etch out what it's going for, at least to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes this movie kind of work also is the interpretation of it. We were comparing it to Stalker earlier, where different people can watch this film and get out of it what they want to see, or different things that they get out of it. Like I could see someone watching this movie being like, yeah, that was great. I loved how visual it was. It's a very pretty, stunning, visually peaceful movie. I love the score of it. I love all the technical stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then someone else could watch it and be like, yeah, I thought it was a very like kind of intimate look at childhood and like growing up and in that time period and all these different things. Like different people's interpretations of the same thing. Mm-hmm. I think is one of the more fascinating parts of not just movies, but art in general. And this to me feels like an art piece that Terrence Malick wanted people to think of that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that there's a couple different things going on. I guess I read somewhere that this is 4 acts. Like he was very, very 2001 inspired, just less conflict and a little bit more on the philosophical side.
Yeah.
But no, I and that's why I think that I say that. I liked probably 2/3 of this film, or at least 2 out of the 4 acts, or 1 out of the 3 acts. I did not care for the Sean Penn stuff.
It's fascinating how he's second billed in this movie, and he's in it for like maybe 5 minutes.
Dude, I read on the trivia that he was just like, I don't know what he was going for. It wasn't a very straightforward narrative. And he's like, so he would ask me to do these things and I don't know how to act. So he's like, you're kind of getting whatever out of me.
Let me ask you this. Did you have any trouble seeing Brad Pitt as the character he was playing? Did you have any hangups with viewing him portraying the dad at all?
No.
Like no trouble whatsoever?
No.
To me, it was almost distracting having Sean Penn be that character, having this presence. Sean Penn, I don't know if you've looked at the dude. He's a very distinctive looking man. He's a very distinctive actor.
Yeah.
And I feel like it almost would have been more effective if they had just gotten it, to use Sam's terms, some jobber to play it, where you get someone who isn't like immediately as recognizable as someone like Sean Penn,
I think,
but can still have like some sort of presence in the movie.
You have to have Sean Penn do that, because if you don't have him, you are fast forwarding through those 2 parts. Like
Maybe, but then what is Sean Penn doing?
Yeah, but
that sets him apart.
Nothing. But it's Sean Penn. So you're watching Sean Penn, and it's like, what's Sean Penn gonna do? So whether or not he's the character, that's why I kind of just didn't like that part, because I was like, I'm just thinking of Sean Penn doing Sean Penn things.
The best thing I do like about Sean Penn in this movie is the like 1 or 2 times he does the like kind of whisper voice over the video
he's
playing.
got like a distinct crackly voice.
Yeah, he's got a good voice for that, and I think that part works really well.
Yeah.
But then everything else about him being in the movie, it almost kind of pulls me out of it. It's like, okay, I had the thought while watching this that it seemed like Sean Penn just walked off of his biplane that he was flying that day, and then just like walked on set. He's like, yeah, I'm in architecture now.
He said he filmed for like 2 days. Not to say quote,
probably got paid more money than I'll ever see.
I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it was pretty much like, I didn't know what the fuck this was about. Malik just asked me to do these things, so I did it. But like, I was just there. It's not like he was bought into the character.
We went to the beach and we kind of wandered a bit, and
there's a bunch of extras, and I just held up little kids.
I got to hang out with Brad and Jessica, and it was kind of neat, but I don't know.
That last 20 minutes, I read there was some form of art that he was trying to. I don't want to say it was impressionist, or I can't quite remember what it was, and I don't know anything about art, so I don't want to sound like a dumbass. But that last 20 minutes was supposed to be a reflective piece of art that was supposed to kind of tie in some of the memories and some of what we've seen throughout the story.
Clearly like walking through the past type of thing, reconciling with some of those issues that carried over into adulthood.
Did he reconcile, or did he just hold up a kid in water?
I mean, I think that's up for us to decide. That's the beauty of it.
That's why I was like, this film could just cut that out for me and I'm good, because he got to the end of that thing, and then he like wakes up and he's all of a sudden standing in front of this building, and he gets this like wry smirk on his face, and he just walks off.
He's like,
yeah, I just conquered my demons. All right.
So I am going to throw this out there, and feel free to fight me on this if you want.
Okay.
I think that Hunter McCracken as young Jack might be one of the more like grounded child performances I've seen in a movie, next to something like The Florida Project, where you've got this little kid who is very believably acting like a little kid. And I think it does help that sort of improvisational nature of Terrence Malick filming this movie, of like, hey, kid, just go like fucking play in the yard or whatever the hell you do with other boys your age, and we'll film it.
Yeah.
But I also do think in the moments when it isn't that, and it's clearly like a constructed scene with actual dialogue and actors playing back and forth, I think he does a really good job. And I kind of want to hear where you sit on that.
Come on.
I think he does a good job. I think
he does do a good job.
I think the kid who plays the middle brother does a really good job.
They were all great. I mean, they all. I thought this is well acted, besides it just being very melodramatic. Mm-hmm. But you do have a sense of the time, and they do a good job when they're interacting with each other and expressing genuine emotion and fear and glee. And yeah, they did do a good job. I don't want to sit here and be like, blah, blah, blah. No, they did a good job. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see another universe with another kid in there and be like, hey, like that guy knocked it out of the park, or it's just Malick had a good idea. And he was able to get these kids running through 90 minutes of film of just videotaping them on a swing, and then how many like lines of dialogue did he have? I don't know, maybe 50.
I mean, it wasn't a lot, but with what he did do, I was impressed with the end result.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to, they did do a good job. I just don't know if it was like he was the only one that could do it, or if it just happened to be, if he was in the role and just didn't fuck it up.
Well, I did read that there were 95,000 Texan kiddos that either like auditioned for the role, or like Terrence Malick kind of like looked over and was like, you and you.
Yeah.
But either way, he whittled it down to those 3 kids, and I think that it was very purposefully those 3 kids that were picked for some reason. And the youngest one,
Ty Sheridan,
who turned out to be Mr. Ready Player One boy.
Yeah. He's also in Mud.
Is he? I haven't seen Mud. That's the Matthew McConaughey one, right?
Interesting.
He plays Mudd.
Yep.
His name is Joe Mudd in the movie.
I don't know. Maybe it is Joe Mudd. I just know they call him Mudd.
Hey, I'm Mr. Mudd.
Mudd's a great film.
I will add it to the list.
Mudd is one we saw that me and my brother were going to go out and see. I think it was like The Crazies or something.
Oh, God, I remember The Crazies.
We go to the cinema.
I remember the pitchfork against the concrete.
Yes. And so we go there, and I don't remember, it might not have been that, but it's a movie. We're going out there to see a movie, and we find out that we read the wrong time that it was going to start.
Uh-huh.
And we get there, and it's like, well, we're already here. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And he's like, hey, I heard good things about this movie, and McConaughey's in it. And mind you, McConaughey isn't True Detective McConaughey yet. Like, he's coming off like Fool's Gold and all those shit movies.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Failure to Launch.
Yeah. He's still doing like Sahara. And he's, so he's like, McConaughey's in it. It's like, well, let's go see that, and fine piece of film. And it's got our boy Michael Shannon in it.
Ooh, I do like me my Michael Shan.
Yeah. So anyways, Ty Sheridan, as soon as I saw him as a young boy, I did like the Leonardo thing, pointed at the screen. I was like, no shit.
Yeah. He looks virtually the same, just smaller.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's probably how I noticed him.
Like they shrunk him down and they put him in this movie.
Honey, I shrunk Ty Sheridan.
Unlikely sequel. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot going on in this movie visually, between the depictions of like the universe being born and like also the very intimate scenes of like him growing up. I don't know. I thought this was like a very solid visual piece of art. I don't know if there's anything else past that I can kind of put a stamp on this movie. I mean, it is my first Terrence Malick film. I haven't seen any others. I've watched scenes of Thin Red Line, but that was because my dad was watching it one day, and this was when I was still living with him.
That's another great Malick film that I really like. Thin Red Line.
I know. I guess Jim Caviezel's supposed to be really good in it. That was like his...
Nick Nolte's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Nick Nolte playing the frustrated general and him he does some shady things, and John Cusack's like calling him out on it. Mm. And he's getting backed up into a corner. It's just gravelly Nick Nolte explaining stuff. And like, hold on, wait a minute. I had those boys. They were up on the hill, and you're looking at me like I'm not supposed to do this. And now, hey, listen, John, if we get on the same page here, this could be very good for us. But, like just completely cornered trying to get out.
Yeah.
It's a fun. That one. I wouldn't mind rewatching that one.
Nick Nolte, very good at playing unhinged.
Oh, dude. I love unhinged Nick Nolte.
Well, he like dials it up for that Hulk film, the Ang Lee Hulk movie.
Yeah.
Where his hair is just like all fucking wild everywhere, and he's like, I'm your father. Like he's just like going through just gargling
barking.
Fucking jacks.
Dude,
the
or
whole
the
time.
Warrior when he comes back to work with Tom Hardy.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh man, there's one line that I remember in it. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, I can't go on a Nick Nolte tangent right now because I will lose my voice if I do.
I appreciated this thing a lot more on the second time.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you're kind of, maybe not fully converted, but there's some recognizable aspects about this movie seems like you can point to more than when you first viewed it.
Dude, this thing, as soon as I get with Brad Pitt, so the thing I read on the synopsis was it's like a young boy in the 1950s Texas as he's struggling to find his way in life with understanding faith and God in the universe with a faith centered father, and the troubles that he has, growing up or whatever. And I read that, I was like, oh, okay, so this thing's gonna be a little bit more oriented towards the religion and how that plays a part in all this, and kind of how, and it does a little bit, and it's kind of funny. Like you look at Brad Pitt, like there's another aspect. Like I talked about the role of the family and Jasmine being there and being able to talk with her about that stuff. You could look at Brad Pitt almost being like God, and why are you doing these things if all I do, if we tithe and we give you and we pledge that you're not unjust or you're not being favorable, or why do you do these things?
And that's the whole idea of the Book of Job in being included in this.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how familiar you are.
Zero.
So the book of Job is the story of this man named Job, who in the Old Testament was known as one of God's most fervent worshipers. And God is approached by Satan, and Satan says, if you punish Job, he will forsake your name. And God is like, he will not forsake my name. He loves me.
Yeah.
And he worships me. And Satan's like, well, prove it. And so then God puts Job through all these horrible trials. He loses his family. He loses his house. He loses his cattle.
Yeah.
Like all these different things. And Job still praises God's name.
Yeah.
Even though he's being put through all these horrible things and all these awful trials, he still looks at God as benevolent. And that theme is prevalent in this movie because, like you were saying, the son looks to the father and goes like, I love you. Why are you doing this?
Yes.
If I continue to show love for you and display it in the best way that I can.
Yeah.
And it's a very prevalent theme that's matched, I would say, fairly well throughout the film.
Dude, I mean, that just hearing that, it's kind of, and Malik kind of taking a little bit of a creationism versus evolution, and that's what you're pitting some of those, like we said, like some bigger, like this is how you beautifully put together bigger concepts, pit them against each other and let it play out versus...
I don't know what other movie you're talking about.
I don't
Mac.
either.
I don't think there's
that one's kind of gone.
Yeah, that's kind of...
It's done.
Yeah, I don't think any other film, especially not one that we've discussed this episode, fits that description.
Yeah, fucking Ford Coppola just railing coke while, Malik's reading Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, but that's...
The Virgin Coppola versus the Chad Malik.
Dude. But yeah, that's this is way more coherent, and it's funny because it's like it's way more coherent in an almost incoherent way. This is not a straight narrative.
Everything feels very kind of like indirect, almost like inconsequential.
Yeah,
but at the same time, there is a purpose there.
It's driving.
Yeah,
which that's why I said the last bit with Sean Penn I could deal without, because that just. No reason. No need for it for me.
I mean, I didn't mind it. I truly think that if you got someone other than Sean Penn that wasn't as like distractingly recognizable.
See, that's why because if you got anyone else, I don't care. Like that guy doing whatever he was doing. So the funny thing is, Sean Penn goes through the door the first time. Mm-hmm. I thought it was some dude. And I was like, why is he going through who is this guy?
Oh, man, not me. I immediately recognized him as Sean Penn. Because
then the next scene, he's in the bed. And I'm like, okay, why is Sean Penn here?
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of confused. And I'm just like, so and then at the end of it, he's going up to that door again. And he's like looking around. And I go, oh, that was Sean Penn in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking like, okay, this helps me out a little bit more with... So, I mean, if it was some random guy... I mean, this is just me. If it's some random guy, I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Right.
Like, I think you need to have... Now, maybe... Okay, if it's not Sean Penn, throw Matt Dillon in there. Mm. So does that have the same...
Everything circles back to Matt Dillon.
Has to.
It has to.
Or Tom Hardy. If Tom Hardy's... Hey, get Jack out of here. Let's get Tom Hardy into this thing. It's just Tom Hardy playing a 10-year-old.
Hey, put your finger over the bullet. Put your finger over the BB gun. You want to be a bike rider?
Yeah. Oh, my God. What was that?
Dad, why do you hurt me? I just try to do good things.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, that's probably about the most I've got on it.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, I have a very clear feeling on this film. It's just one that, I don't think it extends too much past me appreciating the narrative and how deep I can go with it if I want to go as deep as I can. But at the same time, this also just sort of working as a visual piece of art. It's just, some of it gets a little bit lost, but I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was.
Sure.
We are getting to that point where, unless there's anything else we want to touch on with this movie.
I can't, dude. This is a conversation that I would have with someone that's also like outside of you, and just let them go and add on, because I don't know if I could clearly formulate. There's some
For
things
sure.
in here that I took away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we can wrap up this discussion on the Tree of Life. It was a very good discussion. I liked that.
Yeah.
I think you can give your rating first, since
Okay.
I went first last time.
So, I went on to IMDb, and my original rating for this was a moderate or a modest 5 out of 10. Not big on the visual side of it. Like I it's the same way. I mean, I kind of was like with Stalker, with it's like, man, this is cool, but like it's dragging. It's dragging. Pacing's pretty not there. I don't know how to else say it, pleasantly. It's slow.
It doesn't go down smooth.
No, it doesn't.
We'll just say that.
No, it does not go down smooth. This is a kind of once out of every 10 years you throw it on, or 15.
Or if you just want to, relax yourself and fall asleep, maybe.
Yeah.
Works as some good ASMR.
Oh, man, yeah. A lot of the whispering
Sound
stuff
design
going
in this
on.
movie is very good, too, I will say.
Yeah, the orchestra keeps you going there, and I guess apparently Malik was sitting next to Hunter McCracken, and so the voiceover stuff, you would read him the lines for him to read. Mm-hmm. In the beginning of the film's all right, and then the ending, it's like, what are we doing here? But I really appreciated the middle part. So instead of being a 5 out of 10, this thing's actually an 8 out of 10.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a big leap.
I was sitting there with 7, and after the discussion, just hearing your interpretation of it and your thoughts on it, it's like, wow, we've already kind of we're both sitting right there saying some of the same things, and some of it is you see it differently and I see it differently. Mm-hmm. And like I said, to have a film like that, for you to be able to have a conversation and not be wrong with how you're seeing it, just to be how you're soaking it in.
Yeah.
It opens up a lot of pathways for other just as much as Stalker did. And I think Stalker got an 8 out of 10 for me. Mm-hmm. I can't knock down a movie for poor pacing, or if it drags a little bit, if it is a good film. And I will say that reading some of the trivia on what Malik did, having some of the rules set out with the cinematography, knowing he had 3 houses set up that would capture lighting in the best ways. That's an actual town in Texas that he went and scoped out for the on location filming. Mm-hmm. Apparently the butterfly scene with Chastain, they filmed her running for 3 blocks, and like a lot of it feels passionate, and it feels like a smart director making a smart film that has intention.
Yeah, there's a clear voice, there's a clear style, and a clear intent.
Yes.
Which is, I think, the hallmarks of what you need to make an at least interesting movie.
Interesting,
something
and
worth discussing.
Yeah, and having Jasmine there, and with her background in psychology and being a therapist, just having her, like, I'm kind of talking out loud with some of the stuff, and now all of a sudden, like I was talking about Jack being in adolescence and questioning some of the things going on, because that's when you get into that adolescent age, you start, there's more questioning, or you want to know more of the whys as opposed to being just told, and all of a sudden that helps you out with the character. It's like, oh, okay, now I that's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of confusion going on in this young man's head, and
a lot of inner conflict, a lot of outer conflict.
He doesn't know. I mean, he's got two different dynamics. He's being told the rules of the world, and yet they're being, not maybe misguided, or they're being trespassed on by his father, who's supposed to be this holier than holy figure. And then you look at Pitt, and you're like, well, it's not that bad. Like, he doesn't, I don't think in the film hits the kids once. He does grab him by the arm and puts him in a room, but there's never any like physical abuse in there. I mean, it's a lot of and there is abuse, but more of emotional abuse,
Yeah.
But just all of it putting it together and very subtly done, and in the ways that it's filmed, that it's very peripheral, and you're almost walking in a memory with this guy. I mean, it's purposely done, and I can't take away from that. I mean, whether or not it drags for me or not, it's a hallmark of a good film. And yeah, I think this thing gets the same rating as Stalker. I think I probably would take a little bit more out of Stalker than this one, but this, I almost feel
I
like
agree.
I could watch and 4 years and sitting with the right crowd, having a conversation while it's going on, which I think is another good sign of a film.
Yes.
And being able to discuss it kind of, in lights that would help me out understand it a little bit more, what people are kind of gleaning from it. I appreciate. So, Young Mac was wrong about this. I do think Young Mac, though, it definitely dragged on because it wasn't
a bit of a humbling experience for McLean Parker.
20 minutes into this thing, I was like, great, same thing. And I set the laptop down and I started watching it. I'm like, oh, okay, because the synopsis helped me out with like he's battling his faith and where he's at in the world, And then all of a sudden, start talking about the family dynamic and the kid himself and what he's understanding with Jasmine. I'm like, oh shit. And then you read Malik was a Rhodes Scholar, and I don't know if he was, but it said he was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and he has a degree in psychology. And I was like, oh, so he knows what he's talking about. Like this is definitely like not a guess at or just going through. I mean, he's kind of like, this is a little bit of a experimental film, but also like a delve into some of the psychology, like Beau is Afraid. The first time I ever saw anxiety portrayed on screen like that. It's like, wow, that really comes out, and this really came out.
We gotta get Gideon to watch Beau is Afraid. We're gonna have a movie night where we sit him down and we have him watch that movie.
Is he an anxious guy?
I wouldn't say so.
No?
I wouldn't say he's anxious. He's very just extroverted. Like he's just kind of like,
Yeah.
all
If you recommended to him Beau is Afraid and he
energetic.
just said no?
He said he would watch it.
Okay.
Just not entirely sure when. And it
Right.
is a 3-hour long movie, so it's
Is
harder
it?
to convince him. It is.
Boy, that thing went down smooth.
It does. I can't wait to show other
The
people.
cult of Beau is Afraid.
Dude, all two of us.
Yeah, I know. 3, because Sam is in love with the film too.
That is amazing to hear.
That would be a film that I'm watching with people I trust.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could...
You gotta kind of like know who you're showing it to.
Yeah, because if they don't understand it, it could be misconstrued as a very...
Right. Like I wouldn't show my dad Beau is Afraid.
Yeah, that's what I'm...
In fact, I might try to keep him away from it.
Yeah, let's grab some friends we just made and show them one of our favorite films.
Yeah, it's like you get introduced to your improv group. You're like, hey, I got a movie we could watch after this. So I can go into my rating.
Yeah.
This is a film that I was sort of not dreading discussing on the podcast, but one that I knew was either going to be like a revisit and a recontextualization of a movie that you didn't have the best experience with.
Despised.
One that I was going into really with not many expectations other than knowing that it was going to be long and a very visually stunning movie, very visually centered movie. And I watched it, and there's a lot that I can take from it. There's a lot that I enjoy about it. I've got my issues with like some of the pacing and some of the connectivity of the themes.
And Sean Penn.
And Sean Penn a little bit. But there is something to be said about a movie like this or like Stalker where, I don't know, they just foster the most interesting discussions of what you can get out of it.
Yes.
So I can see myself, if I ever watch this again in like a year or two, bumping up my rating. But for right now, this is a high 7 out of 10.
Wow.
So
it's
like on the cusp of being an 8. Might change it at some point, but for right now, I'm pretty comfortable with it sitting at that score.
So I got this thing ends, and I'm like, oh, okay, 6 out of 10. Like better than a 5. I know it's better than a 5.
Right.
6 out of 10. This is slow, and I've already kind of...
Pretty significantly up from when you watched it previous. Yeah.
Oh, I gave it a 5 just off the memory of me hating it. And I was like, I know it wasn't bad. I just didn't like it.
Uh-huh.
And, it's like I'm going to die on that hill. And then we get done watching it, and Jasmine goes to bed. I'm like, 6 out of 10. And then I wake up today, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, no, I kind of like that. Oh, yeah, I kind of like that. And I was like, 8 out of 10. And then we're sitting here, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to go in the middle, 7 out of 10. And I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I was wrong about it. I'll own up to it, and this is a film that we talked, like when we talked about film class, like remember those 5 films that you show?
It's funny. I listened to that episode recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I just was like, how did this go? And it was a good discussion.
I would still have Jaws in there for like a storyline and setting up,
cinematography. Emmanuel Lubezki.
But
I had The Revenant in there.
Yeah, exactly. This film would be like a twofer. Like you could put this. I mean, this experimental, yes, but I think this is like an experimental film that actually works.
I think so too. Cool. I really like that discussion. We have questions, but I think I'm going to save them for next episode.
Okay.
Because it is getting late and I'm hungry and I kind of want to get some food before I go to bed because I haven't had dinner yet.
What time are we at? Oh yeah, the Padres are on.
You get to make a recommendation. It's your turn. Despite Tree of Life sort of being brought up by you multiple times on the podcast, it was my recommendation. So it is your turn.
All right, let me see. What do we got? So, Tree of Life was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
God, I just had one. Have you?
Year of Our Lord.
2011. Oh, yeah. I was just thinking. Have we ever done The Game?
The David Fincher movie?
You've seen it, haven't you?
I saw it less than a year ago.
Okay.
For the first time.
So we won't do that.
All right. I mean, I'm game to game if you want a game.
Well, I was just thinking something. I'm trying to get something you haven't seen.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen all of David Fincher's movies.
Long Legs still isn't streaming, is it?
I don't think so. I'll check, but I don't think so. Long Legs.
Long Legs were down.
Oh, it's now $9.99 on YouTube as opposed to $19.99 like it was last time.
We're gonna hold off on that, dude.
We'll put another pin in it.
Oh my god! This is why I get. Have you ever seen? Should we do it? Do we have another deep? I don't know if this would be deep or not. There's a movie.
Deep Thoughts with the Deep. It's a boys reference for you. I caught up on The Boys. Did I tell you that?
No, I haven't. Does it hold up? Is it still good?
Season 4 is so weird.
Okay.
Because it starts out okay, and then like the whole middle business of it is just kind of going in circles, it feels like. And then the last episode caps it off in a way where you're like, fuck, I really want to see what happens next. So they hook you. They
still
you.
do it. They still do it.
They still kind of do it.
They got all that fucking filler in there, and then they still get my ass.
It is, yeah. There's some good shit. There's some tiring shit.
Yeah,
but it's solid.
I might check it out. I still got it. Okay, all right. So the real question is, do we go? Is it young or old? Right? Do we go? We kind of have. Well, we had two new movies in here. Tree of Life is 2011.
Yeah. I'm just gonna lean old, just because.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right.
Because we've been kind of leaning more towards like a contemporary stuff recently.
Are we gonna pair this up with Joker? Is that the next one that we have to do?
It's probably worth discussing.
I would think we have to have that in there. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we're just gonna rip the Band-Aid off.
Do it.
This movie's been on my watch list for a little bit now. There's I think an incredible story behind it. It fits in a little bit with Sorcerer, and we both appreciated Sorcerer.
Fucking love Sorcerer.
I don't know if we're gonna get that same sort of sardonic element with it. But it's a PG movie. I don't know if Sorcerer... No, that was R. But I think just because of the language.
Oh, there's some violence in it too. But
yeah.
Not anything like...
Not gratuitous.
Yeah, it's not fucking like RoboCop or anything.
Right. This movie, I'm fairly certain I saw is on Peacock. And I'm hoping you haven't seen it yet. And
okay.
I'm hoping that you actually haven't heard of it. Fitzcarraldo.
You know, the name sounds familiar. 1982, Werner Herzog.
Yep.
So... I've heard that name before, just in like general film discussions of like different podcasts that I listen to.
Yes.
No idea what it's about.
Okay. Perfect.
So
Perfect.
All I know is that it's called Fitzcarraldo and that Werner Herzog directed it. And I guess it's 157 minutes long.
We did it.
It's a bit of a meaty boy.
2.5 hours.
We did it.
1982, 2.5 hour Fitzcarraldo by Werner Herzog.
2 hours and 18 minutes. Mr. White. Cool.
Yeah.
We'll do that. We'll pair it. I can't fucking speak. It is late and I'm hungry. we will do Fitzcarraldo, directed by Werner Herzog, paired with Joker, Folie à Deux, directed by Todd Phillips. If you don't want to be spoiled for those films, be sure to check them out before episode 82. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Neon Crew Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us some 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you haven't already. We also have a website, www.neoncrewpodcast.com. Check out our Etsy page, get some merch. Also, follow us on our various social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube community. Links for those in the description. Shout out to Gideon for doing our music, and shout out to Lauren for doing our artwork. Shout out to Sam for the night call. If he has one this week, then hope you enjoyed it. If not, we'll catch up on the next train. We'll catch up on the next montage of evolutionary imagery. McLean, what do we say before we sign off? Before we kiss and yell time stop on this podcast?
WWTHD?
Time stop.